This draft? What's there not to say? This is just the beginning for these guys. It's time to come home.
Tries to make a dribble and fumbles the football. It's picked up and walking into the end zone.
All these minor league players looking to make their impact? There's only one place to do that.
Oh my goodness!
Put up or shut up.
Oh boy!
The time to make your mark is now. Never before has the spotlight been brighter.
He always comes up big in big-time situations.
Can you stand the heat?
They did not catch him.
I made my mark.
With the 13th pick, the Chicago Wildcats select Mike Improta.
It's time to make yours.
Throwing it to the top of the screen. Looks like Mike Improta get the call.
This is the SFL draft. I'll see you on the field.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Rounds 3 and 4 of the SFL draft coming to you live tonight. I am your host, Andy Hamilton. Joining me is Tim Hackett. Tim, how are you doing this evening?
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure learning from you guys over the last couple of days, getting to see all these SFL dreams come true through rounds 1 and 2. Let's make some more happen tonight.
Also joining me, owner of the Arizona Scorpions, Eddie Gage. Eddie, how are you this evening?
What up, though? Feeling pretty good. Just waiting for my turn to draft, which won't be till later this week.
Yes, indeed. Michael Torillo is joining us as well. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. Lots of very interesting picks on the table tonight, including fresh teams filling out their rosters, which should be exciting.
And special guest with us tonight, the number 1 pick in last year's draft and new quarterback of the Louisiana Revolution, Johnny Pickler. How are you?
Very good, my man. Glad to be here. It's crazy how so much can happen in 1 year, going from being on the stage to being behind the panel.
Indeed. Well, we are going to get started here in this third round. Atlanta, the Swarm on the clock with the 45th pick. And speaking of quarterbacks, Johnny, they just took Bryant Dynasty to end the second round last night. And, a great guy to a new franchise. What are your thoughts on that selection for them?
I mean, I'm thrilled for Dynasty. Mark's a great guy, championship organization. I'm curious to see how he's going to do. I just, I'm not sure if he's going to replicate that, that 105 QBR, that Dunhill had in that MVP performance last year. I think everybody has to remember that, give Dynasty some time, give him some time to build. It's about a 30-point, I think, differential from, where Marcus left off at a 115 rating to Dynasty's 85 or something like that coming in. But I'm rooting for the kid, and I hope he has a great year. I mean, you can ask for better weapons as a rookie.
Siege Falco, the general manager of Atlanta, doing a good job this offseason in getting this team really rolling. Eddie, talk to me about what Atlanta might need with this 45th pick.
Atlanta, after winning a championship, their kicker, Shane Short, decided to take his talent elsewhere. Perhaps they use this pick to sign his replacement.
I believe I heard the sound, and I believe that the pick for the Atlanta Swarm might potentially be in. We'll go to the desk with Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
Good evening, guys. With the 45th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Atlanta Swarm select kicker Sammy Steele. Louisiana's on the clock with the 46th selection.
And there you have it, Sammy Steele, the selection for the Atlanta Swarm at kicker. Eddie, you nailed it right on the head. And let's throw it over to Michael Torillo. Torillo, talk to me a little bit about how kicker emphasizes this championship team and adds another layer.
Yeah, and we've seen a trend over the past couple of seasons in the SFL where teams really rely on kickers. And it started in Mexico City with Gags, and then it sort of set dominoes in motion, and now almost every team has a star kicker, and Sammy Steele, a fantastic get. He's going to do wonders for this team this season, and I really like this pick.
Great pick. And Tim Hackett, your thoughts as they add another scoring weapon. If Bryant Dynasty can't get him in the end zone via the air, why not let Sammy kick it?
That's a great point. And yeah, I think what we've noticed is that think we've noticed is that there's going to be a premium on kickers. We saw 2 selected already in the first 2 rounds, so there aren't that many still available. So if this is a great opportunity for Atlanta to swoop in and pick up their replacement, as Eddie was saying, and Sammy Steele is a really solid kicker in the minor leagues. Almost every kicker was solid, if not very good, across the board. All the kickers that were still available were very reliable for their minor league teams, so this is a fine pick.
Absolutely. And Stammy helped me in Vancouver onto a playoff win over Jacksonville with a late kick there. But breaking news, the first time in this draft we have a trade. We're going to go to Commissioner Cameron Irvine with the news.
The Louisiana Revolution and the Fort Worth Toros have finalized a trade. Fort Worth will receive the 50th and 59th picks. Louisiana will receive the 46th and 67th picks. Louisiana is on the clock at 46.
There you have it, Louisiana on the clock. Johnny Pickler, as we saw there, taking a phone call, might be a little bit busy working with Gerald to get something going. So, Eddie, let's throw it to you. Louisiana jumps up here in the draft. What might they be targeting with this selection?
Gerald, I'm not quite sure. He did a great job in St. Louis last season, and I'm pretty sure he'll do a great job again this season. He also needs a kicker, but he also has needs on the defensive line as well. So we have to sit back and see. I don't know. The value at kicker is more abundantly so than defensive end in this draft. So perhaps he drafts a kicker right now.
That's an interesting thought. Torillo, let's throw it over to you. If they were going to go kicker, who might they go with? I know Nico Cappuccino is still on the board with 14 weeks banked, but here in rounds 3 and 4, they can go with a primary or a secondary selection. Who do you think they might take here?
I don't know. There's a couple of good kickers still on the board. Amy Shalizzi comes to mind, as well as Nico Cappuccino. Although I think they may go defensive line, and there's a couple names I'm thinking of there. Igor Barbatov has not been picked up yet. Neither is A.K. Jones nor Buggy Mosley. So all of those names very interesting on the defensive side of the ball. But as Eddie said, kicker very likely here.
Yeah, and defensive line, another interesting choice. They went with Ross Napoli in the first round, so potentially creating a tandem there on the defensive line. Tim Hackett, in your opinion, with this Louisiana Revolution team, they have a lot of picks tonight, a lot of places that they could go. What if you were the GM of the Revolution, where would you be going? And keep in mind, Johnny's down there in the corner keeping an eye on you, so you better make a good call here.
Yeah, I don't want to get anything wrong. I can be easily corrected. To me, there are 2 choices here, and I think the rest of the guys have hit it already. I think defensive end is a really good, logical place to kind of find a secondary person to augment Ross Napoli, their first-round pick. On the other side of the defensive line, Louisiana has 2 picks left in the draft today. So I think that's a good strategy, but I have to question why the trade comes in now. And my answer to that is I think I'm going to go back to what Eddie said. They saw Atlanta take a kicker the previous pick. So now they know that 3 kickers are off the board. And if Louisiana is sitting there thinking we also need a kicker, I think maybe that pick could be what has spark-plugged them to jump up in the draft and ensure that they get the kicker that they want rather than sitting around until, pick 50 and hoping that kicker is still there. So I think to me that might be where I'm assuming they go. Now that they don't have as many kickers to choose from, they need one. They're going to move up as high as they can to ensure they get their guy.
An interesting thought. I like the breakdown of the trade, and I'm going to do a little breakdown of my own. I see Portland sitting on the clock at 47. I see Louisiana potentially jumping in front of them. This could be a hot take, so the chat's going to let me know whether I'm right or wrong. But I think Portland needs a lot of weapons, wide receiver potentially being one of them. There are 3 receivers on the Revolution roster, but who's saying they couldn't go for a 4th here? Maybe they're jumping in front of the Portland fleet to grab another receiver to make sure that they don't go to Portland. It's possible, not exactly what it could be, but Eddie, do you think I'm completely off base there?
As we've seen so far throughout this draft, as well as previous seasons, we just never know what anyone is thinking. Every year we're surprised by things, and we just have to sit back and wait just like everyone else.
In terms of off-season moves, the Louisiana Revolution have made some big ones, building a roster. They brought back Tank Bennett and Reggie Streeter, 2 big players, one on the defense, one on the offensive side. They also brought in Blake Craze at the linebacker position to pair with Chuck Diesel. So an interesting defensive build, very strong at its core. Nathan Blake comes over along with Jeff Melanishin, who's also their GM in the secondary. And then on offense, Chase Earl, they just drafted Mike Twinscrew along with the defensive tackle Luther Gond. So this Revolution team bringing in a strong mix of new players as well as old players. Torillo, let's talk to you a little bit. Which free agency signing for this Revolution was the biggest in your opinion? And remember, Johnny's right to your left there. I'd hate for you to say anything that might upset him.
I was going to say, there's really no question, with no disrespect to any of the other players that Louisiana has brought in, the biggest splash of the offseason was getting Johnny Pickler from St. Louis. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to be good on the defensive side of the ball. That secondary is shaping up to be deadly with Tank Bennett, Nathan Blake, and Jeff Melanishin back there. But it has to be Johnny Pickler's the biggest get of the season for anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with quarterback being, one of the biggest positions on the board, and Louisiana nabbed themselves a good one, and we'll hear from him right after the pick. Let's head straight to the podium with Commissioner Cameron Irvine for pick number 46.
With the 46th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Louisiana Revolution select defensive end JoJo Shalizzi, East Rutherford, New Jersey, East Brunswick, New Jersey, rather. That is a primary pick for Louisiana. They have fulfilled that obligation. Portland is on the clock with pick 47.
There you go, JoJo Shalizzi, the pick at defensive end, pairing with Ross Napoli, two bookends, along with Luther Gond. This defensive line has been revitalized. Johnny, you got your guy, Shalizzi. Talk to me a little bit about his impact and why the trade to come up to get him here, if you will.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say, all credit goes to Gerald and to Jeff. I am not, part of management and making those final decisions, but yeah, JoJo's a guy that we were after. We love his attitude. We love how active he is. He's a guy that's going to add a little swag to the locker room. That's going to go, he's a big boy that's going to get dirty with Napoli on the other side and, and enhance our defensive line. And we wanted him, and we wanted him enough where we were going to, pull the trigger on that trade because, we received intelligence that one of the teams picking behind us had their eye on him as well.
Yeah, and a primary selection as Cam talked about. Tim, let's throw it over to you. Talk to me a little bit, about Shalizzi and about the importance of taking him at defensive end for this Revolution team in order to fortify that front, which coming into the draft had no players on it, now is up to 3.
Is the key here, and I love the insight from Johnny. I guess I had a good inkling, but I went the wrong way. They didn't react to the pick above. They wanted to prevent the teams coming after them from making this same pick, and that makes plenty of sense because just looking ahead to the next two teams, I think defensive end is something that both Portland and London would have liked to target. So if JoJo Shalizzi was on the board for one or both of those teams, now he's unavailable. So really shrewd move if that's the case by Louisiana and their crew. But to answer your question, I think it's a great pick to try to balance the both sides of the defensive end. Both of these guys were defensive end twos in the minor league, talking about Shalizzi and Ross Napoli, but it doesn't mean that they can't be premier pass rushers on the outside for the major league. I didn't get to see JoJo too much in person this minor league season, but we love Ross. I think there's no secret. He did a whole lot for myself and Mike and Proto over the minor league season. So anybody to join him on the defensive end side of things, I think is going to make his life loads easier. And I think JoJo's going to make a really big impact.
Look in there at Nelson Lozano for the Portland Fleet in the draft war room. And obviously making a very important decision here for the Portland Fleet, along with Jacob Bouvette, the new owner. And when you look at their franchise, they have some holes, some opportunities to fill, but linebacker probably not being one of them. They do have 3 great linebackers, which they brought over: Mel Davis, Amon Takes, Frank Champion. Some holes on the offensive side. Torillo, when you look at this Portland Fleet team, they could go either way here, offense or defense. But if you're the guy on the clock, if you're Nelson Lozano in that draft room right there, which we just saw, which side of the ball are you leaning to?
Well, I think you have to go offense here, and I think you have to go wide receiver here. They only have one, that's Connor Weston. I think they grab another receiver to partner with him and get that rookie wideout core to support Matt South at quarterback. There's a couple of names on the board that are really interesting. Beth Horrell being probably the most interesting. Art Vandelay also is a name that you could look at, but I think wide receiver is the way to go here.
Yeah, you also could say, you also could say Fox Highwind and CJ Arthur at the top of the board with the most weeks banked. Arthur with 31, Highwind with 30. Highwind's secondary position could be wide receiver, potentially someone to look at. Eddie, let's throw it over to you. You were in the league when Matt South last played. Do you think a wide receiver could be the target here?
Showing my age, but I'm going to go on the other
too.
I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. I'm looking at cornerback. They have one starting corner, and if you're going to be diverse and complex on defense, you have to be able to play man coverage. And if you can't do that with only one star corner on your team, so I think they're going to load up possibly on the defensive side of the ball.
That's a great point. And they also, now that I look at it, have no members of the safety, no free safety, no strong safety.
Yeah.
Johnny, real quick here before the pick comes in, talk to me a little bit, as a quarterback, do you want more weapons on offense or do you want a strong defense on the other side of the ball? If you had to pick one, what would be your preference?
Oh, man. I mean, you got to have some weapons, but I mean, I don't think there's a quarterback out there besides me that loves watching a good defense. I mean, at the end of the day, good defense provides more opportunities for you. They bail you out when you make a mistake. So I don't think you can go wrong with either way. But get the kid a weapon right here.
Well, we'll see right now what the potential pick is. Let's head over to the podium with Commissioner Cameron Irvine for number 47.
With the 47th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select wide receiver Art Vandelay, Miami, Florida. London, you're on the clock with the 48th selection.
And there is the wide receiver coming off the board, Art Vandelay. Tim Hackett, talk to me a little bit about Mr. Vandelay. I heard he was a latex salesman in a past life, but what do you know about Mr. Vandelay?
Well, he, along with Gene Valentine, provided probably the best 1-2 punch in terms of wide receiving cores in the minor league. And he runs the intermediate routes extremely well. He stretches the field, good speed. And his catch in the semifinal game, Ottawa against Annapolis, to put the Cavalry in the championship game against Madison was, and Mike Improta said it during the title game, the best catch of the minor league season. So he's got the hands. I'm sure you can find it somewhere along the league website or social pages. It was a diving catch to get a pass from new St. Louis quarterback Javier Vasquez down the left seam, completely laid out to set up the game-tying touchdown to allow Ottawa to send that game into overtime and ultimately win it. So he's got the clutch gene, if you will. He's got the hands, really good speed, runs routes extremely well. It's a really good wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to be the 1 or the 2 alongside Connor Weston, who, as we mentioned, is going to be a secondary position, having started his career as a running back. I don't know who's 1 or who's 2. Vandelay was normally the 2 for Ottawa, so maybe he can slide right in there, but should be an exciting twosome for Portland.
Yeah, and 2 good receivers going back-to-back here. Weston along with Mr. Vandelay paired together to go along with Nelson Lozano, the tight end, and John Truzman as weapons for Matt South. Johnny, as a quarterback in this league, having 2 young wide receivers, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve to get them going. But do you think these 2 guys can be weapons for Matt South to make Portland a contender right away?
Yeah, definitely. I think that Art specifically is a great pick. You guys laid it out there, with the things he did in the minors and what his strengths are. I know that we run a balanced offense in St. Louis. We did last year. We're going to do similar things in Louisiana. I have young receivers underneath me with Twin Screw and Saren Storm and Chase Earl, who are sophomore receivers. We're confident in what they can do. I would be confident in Art coming off and being really impactful right off the bat. I think that let him show his stuff. So yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, great opportunity for him to get rolling. And, rolling through this draft, we go Liam Crowder and Tanner Hendricks on the clock here at 48 for the London Knights. Michael Torillo, what do the Knights need now moving through this draft? As, it's late in London. I heard Liam Crowder might have taken a nap today to try and prepare for staying up this late. What might they be targeting with this 48th selection?
Well, I think they're going to target fullback because that's the only position that they don't have at least one of, and they're really good on defense. So they have 2 free safeties, a strong safety, defensive end, defensive tackle. They could look to add a second to either of those positions on the defensive line, but I think fullback is really key here to try and make a lane for their new running back, Robert Merrill. A couple of names I'm looking at would be Ari Mills or Bill Cherry, but there were a lot of fullbacks, great fullbacks in this SFLM season. You can't really go wrong with any of them.
London taking, Benji Matson in the first round at tight end. They took Jeff Gagne on the line at linebacker in the end of round 1, and then before I can even get to the next word, the pick is in for London. They waste no time. Let's go to Cameron Irvine with the pick.
With the 48th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the London Knights select Fox Highwind, wide receiver, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Houston is on the clock with the 49th pick. It must be at a primary position.
Well, there it is. The wait on Fox Highwind is over. The London Knights select him 48th overall in the 3rd round. What a moment for Fox Highwind to live out his dream. Tim Hackett, talk to me a little bit about Fox. Was a halfback in the minor league, converting over to wide receiver. And interesting considering that London themselves converted Robert Merrill from wide receiver to halfback.
Yeah.
Now going the opposite way, and they got a weapon.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that was mentioned last night, and now they've done it twice. 2 tailbacks in the minor league that they've converted to wide receiver to go completely against the grain from what they've done in the major leagues in the past. This is a fascinating pick. I think this was the player that, I don't want to speak for the rest of you guys, but I feel confident in saying that this was the player that we were all waiting to see go. There aren't many running back spots still available, maybe 1 or 2 still left in the draft. So for Fox, he knows that the positions, the literal positions, the opportunities for him to play running back have all but been exhausted at this point. So we were wondering if he would flex out and play a new position, and clearly he's seen something with Liam and company to make him realize that this is the way to go. So I know for a fact that he really wanted to be in the SFL, the major league, regardless. I know for a fact that he wanted to be a running back first and foremost, but as we've seen over the last day especially, that doesn't always happen. It's not always that easy, and finally a deserving guy gets a spot on a major league team.
Yeah.
Well, and Eddie Gage, you sounded really excited about this selection for London. Talk to me a little bit about Fox Highwind and what this could mean for Liam Crowder in this offense.
I'm excited for Fox Highwind himself. As you can see in the chat, he is very excited. The first thing he said was happy to be a Knight. So he's very enthusiastic. Of course, he wants to play running back. He did not get the opportunity. He's going to be a wide receiver, and he's going to take that opportunity and run with it. It doesn't matter how you get here. Just get here and make the most of that opportunity. Liam is an offensive guru. Offense has never been an issue in London, and I'm sure he's going to find creative ways to get Fox Highwind a football.
Yeah, very interesting. And, we've seen some of these halfbacks move to different positions in this later stages of this draft as the secondary positions become available. Last night, shifting towards Houston here with number 49. Houston shifted running back Stephen McMichaels to fullback. Now, because of that selection at a secondary position, remember, now they have to go with a primary position here at number 49. Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit about how that limits some of their options here.
Well, it does, because they don't have a defensive tackle on their roster, and they don't have a kicker on their roster. So I think that's the 2 likely places where they would go. Obviously, kicker has been a hot commodity earlier in this in draft, and so not a lot of them left. Amy Shalizzi probably the best of the bunch. And then defensive tackle, there's a whole list of names that you could throw out there that they could say, we can plug them right in and they could do really well. Chief among them is Tina Begin, the Albuquerque defensive tackle, did a great job this minor league season. But also don't count out players like Igor Berbatov or A.K. Jones. But I think they got to go with one of those 2 positions here.
Yeah, lots of opportunity for Houston to kind of go a couple different ways. So different players, but also different positions. Eddie, you are very close with DeMond. Any insight on where he might be going with this selection?
Not too much insight. I did talk to him a bit. I know he wants a kicker, but wow. Damon, I love you, brother. Get yourself a defensive tackle and show up that D-line.
Well, some interesting, some banter there. If it's going to be kicker, there's a lot of them on the board. Nico Cappuccino along with Shalizzi, and we will wait no further. The pick is in for the Houston Hyenas. Let's go over to the desk with Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
With the 49th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Houston Hyenas select defensive tackle Tina Begin.
Yes.
Warwick, Rhode Island. Fort Worth, you're on the clock with pick 50 via Louisiana.
Wow, there you go, Eddie. I don't know if Damon was listening to you or what, but he went with the defensive tackle. And let's swing it over to Johnny. I'm going to flip this on you, Johnny. Interesting, because you always are talking about offense and defending or attacking the defense, but defensive tackles are going to be attacking you. What does a great defensive tackle for the other team, potentially do for that defense?
Oh, I mean, it's huge, man. I mean, we all know that the war, everything starts up front, whether it's an offensive line or a defensive line. It's why, in the NFL, defensive tackles and defensive ends are some of the highest paid, guys in the sport. It's about chasing down that quarterback. It's about stuffing that run. And, I know last year in St. Louis, it's part of the game planning. When you see a team that has, a horse at a defensive tackle, it's something you got a game plan for. When I see those big names, on the defensive line, those guys who are sack monsters, it's something that I watch out for. You're looking to do quicker routes. You got to adjust your whole game plan to that thing. You're looking to get the ball out quicker. So it's a big thing. Defensive tackles are, they should not be underrated by anybody's mind. No one on the defensive line should.
Yeah, and Tim Hackett, you called plenty of SFLM games. Tita Begin, the conversation online, Twitter specifically, I've been paying attention. A lot of people on Twitter were confused at why Tina Begin was still here at 49. Talk to me a little bit about her and why she made sense for Houston.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. In terms of just brute production, rope production, she was one of the best defensive tackles in the minor league, in a league that was chock full of them. There was loads of very productive interior pass rushers that are still on the board. And exactly to Johnny's point, we saw firsthand in the minor league just how disruptive a good defensive tackle could be. Some of the better defenses, I think I could say all of the good defenses in the minor league had at least one really, really good defensive tackle. And for Albuquerque, the Adams minor league, they had Tina Begin and Mufasa Kamau running the inside. And I think Michael could speak to this as well. He saw them about as much as anybody, Albuquerque, and the two of them were fantastic. So as for why she was still on the board, I don't know exactly. It has to be something with the overall value. And I think we saw last night teams got players at a secondary position for defensive tackle at a higher overall value than any defensive tackle that's still on the board. Most of them were right along what Bernard Patterson was rated overall, some of his check-in levels and whatever. He went number 2 overall in the first round. So everybody else, kind of what as I was saying in passing, there was a big chasm between Bernard Patterson and everybody else in terms of their rating. But now that we've got some of those secondary positions out of the way, I really hope some of these other defensive tackles go, because they were extremely productive and fun to watch.
Well, we just saw Robert Garrett Jr. there with the yellow wall behind him, which I don't know if he planned that or painted it just because of the Toros, but you got to love the dedication there, Michael Torillo. They did pick an interesting player with their first round pick. David Harrell at linebacker was a great pick. I think all of the SFL was very committed and interested in that pick, because I think it was a good one. They do kind of have a need here, Torillo, and you might disagree with me. They have Stephen Hacker, who I believe is dedicated as a number 1 receiver. Then they have Cade Stevens, who with his value, I think, and I was his last coach, so I guess I might have some room to say this, looks to me more like potentially a wide receiver 3. Or, an arguable wide receiver 2 who they might need a good third receiver behind. And I look down my board. Beth Harrell is sitting there with 18 check-ins left. Is that an option for the Toros here, Michael?
I think it is, and they may go for it just to keep the Harrell family together, but I see a more pressing need, a need for a strong safety. They do not have one on the roster at the moment. They've got 2 free safeties back there with Jonathan Taylor-Scotsing and the rookie Ben Stone. But no strong safety as of yet, and I've got a name right at the top of my list, Julian Valier. He made one of the most memorable plays of the SFLM season with that fumble return for a touchdown, and he could be a big name get for this Fort Worth team.
Yeah, Valier, interesting sitting there. 12 check-ins, but 7 missed weeks. Eddie, as a owner in this league, how important is your banked progression versus how many weeks you missed? There are other strong safeties up at the top, Chad Nevels, along with Sean Allen, who have more weeks and less missed. How important is that balance? But before we get to you, Eddie, let's get the pick in for Fort Worth. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to cut you off, man. I know how you like talking about safeties. We'll swing it to you right after this pick. If it's a safety, man, this is going to be real good for you. Commissioner Cameron Irvine with the selection.
With the 50th pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Fort Worth Toros select defensive end Gary Marks, Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Las Vegas, you're on the clock with the 51st selection. It must be at a primary position.
Wow, interesting choice for Fort Worth. All of us are wrong here on the panel. Sorry, Torillo. Sorry, Eddie. You know, it's not going to be a strong safety. It is a defensive end, though. Mr. Gage, how important is that on the front end of that defense to attack the passer?
On both sides of the ball, the game is won and lost up front. I'm not sure why, but a lot of teams don't tend to have that philosophy. I myself have always been that way. You know, in order to get those interceptions, in order to get those pass breakups, in order to stop the run, you need those defensive linemen up front, creating pressure, putting havoc on the quarterback to get them nervous back there. And that's what you need. Same thing on the offensive side of the ball. You want that guy to feel comfortable back there. You need to create those running lanes. Games are won and lost on your offensive and defensive lines.
Gary Marks, a linebacker, moving to defensive end at a secondary position. Mr. Hackett, talk to me a little bit about Marks and that move.
Pick, Andy, I'll tell you why. Gary Marks was probably my favorite outside linebacker in the minor league. He was a tackling machine, top 3 in the league in tackles and solo tackles. For that reason alone, I think he would have been a great pick. But I actually chatted with him the other day, and he kind of told me that he was getting some wavelengths, some insight that teams were looking to move him to defensive end. And it's an interesting story for him personally, he was telling me, because this has happened to him before. It's not his first rodeo. You know, he played high school football, and his first 3 years of high school, he played linebacker. And then his senior year, he got moved to defensive end. And he said, as a high school senior, that was tough. That was not an easy thing for him to have to learn to adjust to. And so he's going to have to do it again. And this time he says he's ready. So he was a star linebacker, but recognized that maybe the way his build was constructed, the way his player was crafted, if you will, would be better suited to defensive end. And clearly RG2 and the rest of the crew in Fort Worth also feel that way. So if he can be anywhere near as productive from the defensive line as he was from the linebacker spot for Boise, and that's how he knows Robert Garrett clearly, then he is going to be fantastic in the next level.
Rolling into Las Vegas a little bit here. John Bond brought in GM Slyn Shady to help with this offseason for the Fury as they had to replace some key guys. They lost Robert Redford, lost Dan Daly at halfback and tight end, replaced them with Scott Johnson and Garrison Blue, respectively. Johnny, talk to me a little bit about how important a halfback and a tight end could be for a quarterback and how important for Thomas Rahman those two selections would go and where you think they could go here with this 51st pick, which has to be a primary.
Yeah, I mean, to your first question, how important is a running back and a tight end? I mean, I'll say right off the bat, since playing, high school football and being competitive, your tight end's your security blanket. And, it's to have a quality tight end that you can rely on. And, I'm lucky to have that in Cody Scott. I'm lucky that Cody, came over here to Louisiana. I'm going to be with him for 2 years in a row. I mean, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good having a great tight end. And having a running back. Having a running back is huge. I mean, you do not want to be a one-dimensional team by any means. So to have a good running back, to have someone that you can rely on, to be able to balance out, it just makes it tougher to defenses to game plan against. And then also, back to the tight end point. You want to create mismatches out there, and it's tough, to game plan in the SFL for good tight ends, depending on the sets, people roll out on defense.
Yeah, very great points, and I think that's all something you have to look at when you face the Fury and potentially, are on the Fury as well as some strengths for them. Michael Torillo, after this pick, we're going to come straight to you, but before we even have time, it's like Cam's waiting there with the sound to hit it just when I go to toss it to the next person. The pick is in. Las Vegas has made the 51st selection. To the desk.
Yeah, but at least I'm not going to pretend to freeze on you tonight, Andy. That was for Lena. With
There
the
you go.
51st pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Las Vegas Fury select defensive end Tank Hutt, Wagner, Oklahoma, retired military vet. 52nd pick, Mexico City. You're on the clock.
Tank Hutt is the selection for Las Vegas. And before we get to Tim Hackett, or excuse me, we said we were going to start with Torillo. I don't want to cut him off there. Mr. Hutt, I had the pleasure of interviewing him. Great guy, very down to earth, a veteran, like Mr. Irvine said. Loves attacking the passing, the aerial attack. Excuse me, Mr. Torillo. What do you know about Mr. Hutt, and how does he help add to this Fury defense?
Well, before Cam interrupted me by submitting the pick, I was going to say that they needed defensive line help, and while I thought that it was going to go up the middle with defensive tackle, defensive end works just as well here. As you said, Hutt, a fantastic guy, a veteran. He's going to partner with Rhett Sawyer on the opposite end of that defensive line, a fantastic pick. Las Vegas should be very happy with the selection.
Let's throw it over to Mr. Hackett. Tim, it never hurts to have a tank on defense, and Tank Hutt is going to add to the Furies' attack there on the defensive front, combining with Rhett Sawyer up there. How is that going to help the Fury?
I'm with Torillo. Honestly, I figured they would go defensive tackle, but here in this point of the draft, they snagged one of the most impactful defensive ends in the minor leagues. You may have heard it at the time, and I still don't even know what the final answer is here. But Tank Hutt had a pick six in week 4 of the minor league season, I believe it was. And that's the first pick six by a defensive end in the SFL in any level, major or minor league. Obviously, this is the first year of the minor league in years. I still don't even know when the last one was. Cam's been working hard, cracking the record books to try to find that. The last couple of years. So he is a history maker, an awesome guy, a really impactful player, and he's got a good speed rush, good spin move, and clearly some good hands as well.
Eddie Gage, swinging it over to you. Some interesting, needs here for the Mexico City Aztec. Cam has tight end listed, and I think that's just a slight to Mike Daggs. I don't know why Cam would do that specifically, but I'm here for it. But they, the 52nd pick, if you will, you can call it oh, there you go. That's a meme. You can call it the Ray Bentley pick, if you will, as they try and replace an important member of their offense. But in terms of the selection here, where would you potentially go after moving Phoenix Jones from fullback to halfback?
Yeah, I was thinking about this afternoon once the news broke that Phoenix was moving to tailback. Perhaps they look to replace him and draft a fullback. That's my first guess.
Yeah. Definitely a potential option for Matthew Lee, Ramos Lynn, and Matt Wilson, this front office staff for the Mexico City Aztecs. Did take Andre Krim in the first round and KT Harrell at linebacker, so they went defense on the first couple rounds. Johnny, I think it might be time for some offense. You're an offensive guy. Does that get you excited for these Aztecs?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that with the news today that Phoenix has moved over to running back, I think they might go fullback. Why not? I think that they're a team that understands the value of a good fullback. Phoenix, it's going to take a season or so to get to that Ray Bentley, build and quality. So, why not help them out with another fullback right now?
Yeah, good point. Do have some good primary build fullbacks still on the board. R.E. Mills comes to mind with 20 weeks banked. That would be a good way, Mr. Torillo, to replace Phoenix Jones at that fullback spot.
I mean, it just seems to be the most likely solution. A like-for-like swap. Move the fullback to the running back, slot in another fullback. It makes sense. tight end and punter the team needs on the board. I can't see them going either of those ways. As I said, Mike Gaggs pretty much has the tight end spot in Mexico City locked down, and I don't think they're going to prioritize punter here. I think they may wait for the supplemental draft to get someone of that disposition.
We're going to wind this back when they draft a tight end, just for your words there, Torillo, where you said there's no way. Let's throw it to Cameron Irvine at the desk for pick number 52.
Mike Gaggs, your reign of terror is over. With the 52nd pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Mexico City Aztecs select tight end TJ Punk, San Diego, California. St. Louis, you're on the clock with the 53rd pick.
Well, I tell you what, Michael Torillo, the Mexico City Aztecs just TJ punked you because they went for the tight end. They went off the board and made all of us look like fools, myself included. Johnny, let's swing it to you first, and then we'll go over to Tim Hackett. You know, a tight end, great weapon. You talked about Cody Scott. How important is this for Matt Wilson now to have two tight ends?
Yeah, it's huge. I don't think it necessarily means, Dag's clock is running out. Although, I do think that, it could be a play for the future. I think that, they might, be comfortable, if they know that he's 1 or 2 years away from being done, that it's time to start building right now. I'm serious. That's, everybody considers that when you bring in another tight end. So that being said, though, running a dual tight set is underrated. To be able to come in a power formation, with a fullback, a running back, and 2 tight ends. I mean, it can be very deadly, and it's a little bit, against the, it's not necessarily orthodox when it comes to what the SFL does. So it can be tough for defensive coordinators to game plan for running a double tight set.
Absolutely. Mr. Hackett, talk to me about TJ Punk.
Really love that insight and analysis because Johnny's right on. Obviously, that is not something that you see very often in the SFL. I mean, for example, in the minor leagues, there was no team had more than 1 star tight end, and every team used backup tight ends a little bit differently. So I think if a team had a 2nd star tight end, they would have schemed their entire offensive playbook loads differently. You would have seen people and just a lot of different impact, a lot of different types of plays, and a lot fewer drops by backup tight ends, we'll put it that way. But when it comes to TJ Punk, I mean, he was one of the most successful tight ends among all of those many stars in the minor leagues. And Albuquerque had 2 different star quarterbacks, and I think they could speak especially to what Johnny was saying because one of their star quarterbacks, PJ Slaughter, threw to the tight end a whole lot more than the other, Mike St. Green. And so when PJ Slaughter was the quarterback, he got to show off that tight end weapon in TJ Punk, and that was really what made the difference for him. So their game plan changed when they had a different quarterback, and the one quarterback said, here, I'm going to use my tight end and show what we can do with this kind of offense more than the other. One isn't necessarily a better strategy than the other, but that's just how it worked for the Albuquerque team. And so TJ Punk really showed when he was given the chance. I think he's a great pick.
Michael Torillo, let's swing it to you. The St. Louis Gladiators now on the clock have a bevy of offensive needs. Took their quarterback last night, Javier Vasquez, making splashes as, most likely, I'd put 99% on this. The last quarterback, selected in this draft, Eagle Mondavi at wide receiver as well. Would you think offense would be the pick here? They do have to make a primary selection by the end of the night. Halfback, there's a lot of good halfbacks still on the board. Is that an option for them right here?
Yeah, I think they take their primary pick and I think they use it for running back. I think they're very disappointed that Fox Highwind came off the board before they were able to be selected because I thought that was where he was going. But there's a bunch of names that there could be. Laura Horrell, Ezekiel Love, Kevin Say are 3 names I'm going to throw out there that could be the running back in the future in the city gateway to the west.
Yeah, lots of options for Colin and Dwayne. Eddie, you seem to think halfback is the way they should go.
Absolutely. But first, TJ Punk, former Arizona Scorpion. Congratulations, big fella. I've been waiting for your name to get called. I'm glad it finally did. Congratulations. But yeah, I believe as well that Ezekiel Love will be my pick for St. Louis. They need a tailback. Fox Highwind is gone to London, and Ezekiel will be my pick.
Ezekiel, a great running back potential option here. Also could use a wide receiver. CJ Arthur with 31 weeks banked still on the board. potentially an option. Benjamin Warner a little bit further down. Jay Moss, as well as Beth Harrell still sitting there. Lots of good offensive weapons. Johnny, do you think maybe they pass on, as a quarterback, if they passed on an offensive weapon here to potentially go defense or, a front four member on the defensive side or offensive line, would that surprise you here?
It would definitely surprise me at this point. I mean, they're pretty. What do they have? Like 10 guys signed to their defense already. I mean, it's time to go offense. It's time to keep building. I think they've embraced it, the fact that they're going to be rebuilding on offense and that they're going to be building as a team for a season or so. That being said, what they have, really intact, is a decent portion of their defense. They pride themselves on the way they play defense. And, they are going to, they're going to be one of the best defenses in the league this year. And that's going to be the way they have to stay in ball games. But you need to go offense right here. And you need to give Javier some weapons, and you need to do it now, or else I wouldn't get what they're doing. And, but I am confident in Drew, who's the head coach over there. I know Colin and Dwayne have a lot to do with this pick, but Drew, don't sleep on him as a first-year head coach. He's a very analytical mind. He's played all the math out. He knows what he's doing, and he's leaving some value. I know he is for those supplementary picks, to boost their value up. So, don't sleep on Drew and his plans right now. I'm not going to question whatever he does right here, but it's got to be offense.
There you go. Well, the pick is in. Let's send it over to Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
With the 53rd pick of the SFL Season 14 rookie draft, the St. Louis Gladiators select tight end Phil Koss, Buffalo, New York. The Jacksonville Kings are on the clock with the 54th pick. And because St. Louis took a quarterback at primary yesterday, all of their picks can be secondary from here on out. 54th to Jacksonville.
Great selection there, Phil Koss. Eddie, you were going to rave on a former player of yours, a former Vancouver Legion generic player. So congratulations to Mr. Koss, well deserved. Mr. Hackett, let's swing it over to you. Phil Koss, a primary player, played tight end in the minor league. Your thoughts on this selection here as a weapon for Javier Vasquez?
I was with the rest of the guys, first and foremost, that I thought running back was going to be a smart way for St. Louis to go here because there simply aren't very many running backs left, primary running backs, that is. I should clarify after what I learned last night in the moment. But tight end was also a position that they needed. They didn't have a single tight end on the roster, as Johnny mentioned, so this was some place that they needed to go. And since TJ Punk went the pick before, you got to wonder if that was something that St. Louis was looking at, but they get a good one anyway. And Phil Koss, who really came on down the stretch of the season, he was really good for Madison at the beginning of the year, then kind of went quiet as Madison kind of shifted to more of a defense-first type of team. Their defense was fantastic. And then he dominated in the championship game. He had 8 or 9 catches, if memory serves, intermediate and short for quarterback Derek Majors. So that's somebody that Javier Vasquez has seen first and foremost. He's game planned against Phil Koss as the head coach for Ottawa now twice in the minor league season. And now he gets to learn how to throw to him and work him into the offense that he's now going to be running as the OC for St. Louis. So this is somebody that he knows very well from an opponent standpoint. And now he gets to work him into the fray, I should say, as his own teammate.
Yeah, love that. Love the insight into it. Let's throw it over to Mr. Gage. Eddie, they add a tight end for the Gladiators. Didn't go halfback. The interesting point that I think Mr. Hackett alluded to, but needs to be said, is there are no secondary halfback builds. Once the primary ones are selected, they're gone.
Yeah. Tough. As Alan alluded to yesterday on Dave Axis' show, I'm sure they have a plan. We just aren't privy to what that plan is. We have to sit back, wait, and see. But wow, it's slim pickings out there, and I'm not exactly sure when they draft again, but hopefully things fall their way for them.
Yeah, about 6 picks before they pick again. But before they do, the Jacksonville Kings and Frank Gooden are on the clock. Some interesting choices here potentially for the Kings. They went wide receiver Mike St. Green. They went Clay Jones at linebacker, and they went Rain Rowe at cornerback. Really, some freedom here, Mr. Michael Turillo, to do a little bit of anything they want. They could go defensive line. They could go, fullback. They could go offensive line. The one thing I have down, and I want to see if you agree with me, they have Jack Wall, who's at a 69.6, which is nice for a tight end, but not really what you would want your tight end one to potentially be, especially with Mexico City there with a good tight end two. Your thoughts on where they could go here?
Yeah, it's really an open book for Jacksonville, so you can't really specifically say where. Whatever pick they're going to get is just going to bolster one side of the ball or the other. I do like your tight end prediction there, Andy, but I'm going to throw out that potentially a fullback as well to give Jared Willis some running room in the backfield could be potential as well.
An interesting thought might be you have Chris Komasak, who was a fullback as a primary, and this pick does have to be primary. So actually, I'm gonna wind back. I was gonna say, what if you move Komasak, the fullback, to tight end? But hey, fullback would be a good option too. Jacksonville has to take a primary here to satisfy the secondary pick earlier. The pick is in, so let's waste no more time. Let's head over to the desk with Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
With the 54th pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Jacksonville Kings select defensive end Mike All, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Atlanta's on the clock with the 55th selection.
Mike All, the defensive end, is the pick. Interesting. He was definitely on my board, as we talked about a little bit before the draft, Mr. Hackett. But Eddie, talk to me about another defensive playmaker. These Jacksonville Kings, over the course of their history, have liked to go defensive line. They do it again here to round out their draft.
That was my selection all along. They're one of the few teams who have the same philosophy that I do. As you see Mike on the screen right now, he's happy. He just found a way to feed his family for the rest of his life. They can retire. But yeah, so Frank has always been one of the guys who, like me, believes in having 3-4 defensive linemen, and that was my guess all along. I knew he'd want to show up that line once again.
I'm not sure if that was a Sector 6 hat, but we're going to let it slide for Mr. All. He just got drafted. We'll let him have that one. Johnny, talk to me a little bit about another pass rushing threat for Jacksonville. That makes 3 for them to combine with Tyquan Hale and Hunter Norwood, some big names. As a quarterback, does that make you nervous if you were staring across the line at those 3?
Man, I mean, I think it's a great pick. Personally, I did think they were going to go defensive end right here, looking up and down at their roster. I think it's a good pick. I'm not going to say, that I personally would be scared, but it's something we'd have to game plan for in Louisiana, if we ended up having to match up against them. But, congratulations to All and to Jacksonville. I think that they, cemented a great defensive line right there. And I agree with Eddie, the war starts up front, and I give kudos to all the big uglies up there.
Yeah, and another primary player off the board. I believe he played for the Lincoln Rattlesnakes, if I'm not wrong, Mr. Hackett. Talk to me a little bit about All and what he brings to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm with the rest of the guys that I thought DN would be a great place for Jacksonville to go. I thought they were in really good shape with their roster construction. And so with a couple of other defensive ends going off the board today and yesterday, they get one of the best remaining. And Mike All, you're right, Andy, he was on Lincoln for the last half of the season, replacing John Fowler, as we know him there, and he made an immediate impact. Lincoln as a unit, their whole defensive line was the best foursome in terms of applying pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So Mike All only played 4, I think, regular season games, and he still finished with a couple of sacks and 5 or 6 tackles for loss. So even with a couple of good teammates around him and Igor Barbatov and Chris Porter, he was able to wreak havoc immediately, and I imagine that's what he's going to be able to do at the next level.
And now we're going to take a look at some of his potential highlights from this Rattlesnakes team. There he is on the defensive line. Big old face mask for Mr. Hall. And, when you look here at what potentially you get out of a defensive end, here he is against the Albuquerque Adams. I mean, just in the backfield in a hurry, Michael Torillo, and, making himself a threat.
Yeah, he has some of the greatest speed off the line that I've seen from a minor league defensive lineman, and he's going to be a threat for quarterbacks all season long, pardon my pun, but it's going to be terrifying for offensive linemen and quarterbacks.
Well, he's going to love that pun, Michael. He's going to love that pun.
The only thing more terrifying than that was letting Torillo talk to make another pun at some point. So glad that you finished it there so we could move on. Atlanta back on the clock, swinging it back around from the top of the draft. Eddie, when you look at this team and what they've done, The champions are on the clock again, and the opportunity to add another weapon.
Atlanta is loaded top to bottom. It's almost unfair. I was just talking to him just today, and he's starting the season off with 12 gold tier players, which just, my goodness, I don't know how he gets away with it. I tell him all the time, I need to notify league staff to run an investigation on his team. But I'm not quite sure where he's going to go with this pick. He sent me a text a little while ago and said he's going to take the league by surprise and hire some league staff. So I'm not sure what that means. But I don't know. Maybe he goes with an offensive lineman to give BDG that much more of a threat to get into some open running lanes. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I know exactly where that would be if we're going with the league staff. Connor Darien, tight end, potentially could be the selection. Our compliance director would fit in nicely with Jamal Wooding as another pass threat for new quarterback Bryant Dynasty. And I mean, you kind of hit it on the head there, Eddie. Would just add to an incredible draft for Atlanta. Johnny, talk to me a little bit about this Atlanta team and what that could add.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think right there when going off Eddie's little clue right there, I think you're looking at Mark Horowitz's guy, and his tight end, another double tight set, just adding more offensive weapons to what on paper is the strongest wide receiver core in the league. I'm not going to say they're stronger than my wide receivers, in Louisiana, but on paper is the strongest wide receiver core in the league. And, on top of that, they have a stellar ass running back. They have a great team overall. To add another tight end is just a scary thought. Give young Dynasty all the weapons he needs. He's going to have fun out there. I do think Atlanta, I think that they're going to throw another defensive back in there soon, which I would think they're going to, they might go a 50B, another free safety or something like that soon, but they might save that for the supplemental rounds. And that's just a thought of mine. But yeah, if they go tight end right here, geez, yeah, Dynasty, no excuse to slip up early. You better have as good a season as I did in St. Louis.
Oh goodness!
Wow. The selection is in. Let's head over to the podium with Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
With the 55th pick of the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Atlanta Swarm select cornerback Connor Darien, Syracuse, New York. Fort Worth is on the clock with the 56th selection.
There you go, a secondary build for Mr. Darien, moving over to cornerback. And an interesting one, guys, when you look at the facet of the league, Marcus Dunhill out, MVP, great quarterback, goes on to a league staff position. What does Atlanta do? They fill a potential spot on the roster with a league staff position. Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit about the SFL and how getting involved can help your draft stock and put you on a team.
I mean, getting involved in other things besides just being a player on the field is probably the greatest thing about the SFL. Look at me. I was a broadcaster for 4 years before I even signed to a team. I mean, I joined the SFL because of the other opportunities it provides. I know people who write for the website, people who do stats for us during the games. It's the greatest way to get owners on your radar saying, hey, I'm willing to help. I'm willing to be here for a long time. And Connor Darien, being already a league staff member before he gets drafted, is the epitome of that. He's going to be here for a while. He's a long-term get for Atlanta. I really like this pick.
Great pick for them. I had Mark in Vancouver last season, Eddie, so it's now 2-1 between the two of us and our guys getting drafted. I'm just going to throw that out there. But he's a great guy, very down to earth, an incredible person. And Tim, when you look at what he did in the minor league, wasn't necessarily the most flashy player, but as a secondary build, I mean, this is an incredible steal for Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what Trullo said makes all kinds of sense. And as we've kind of seen in the past year or so in the major leagues, you're never guaranteed to have a player that you draft stick around. That's never a promise. But if you can get somebody that you think is going to stick around and give you higher value as the years progress, then that's absolutely the way to go. So I think what Trillo said made all kinds of sense. It's really opened my eyes a little bit that if you can get somebody that you think, or at least you hope, will be on your team for more than, let's just say, the next season or two, then that's going to be the type of person you want to target. So I have no idea what kind of cornerback Connor Darien was going to be. He was a very solid tight end when he joined Lincoln this year. good hands. So if he can translate that over to the defensive backfield, then that's a way to start. But yeah, if he's going to be a long-term player in the backfield for Atlanta, which is clearly a team that wants to contend for years to come, and they are built to do so, as Johnny said, then that's a really good pick.
Great pick. And before we move to Fort Worth, I want to answer a question from the chat. Someone named Muhammad Ali is asking, is this a game? And I'm answering because I'm afraid if I don't, he's going to punch me. This is the Simulation Football League. It's the opportunity for you to become a professional football player. You can go from couch to field if you visit the website on the top, http:/simulation.football. You join our Discord community, which is discord.gg/simulationfl. You can hit us up on social at simulationfl. You can become the player on the field, making an impact and being drafted by one of these SFL franchises. Teams and spots are available for the second minor league season, which will start in the offseason of the SFL. And until then, you can watch these guys who get drafted tonight go right onto the field and make an impact. And speaking, Eddie, of making an impact, Fort Worth back up again. They have a lot of picks tonight with the ability to make an impact on their franchise right from the start. How do you look at, what they've done so far, but also what they could do with this pick?
Strong safety. It's a glaring need. They fit a lot of holes, but they got a lot of work to go. And me being a strong safety, I'd like to see them fill that spot.
Yeah, great point. There are a lot of good ones still at primary position. Sean Allen still on the board. Chad Neville, Solomon Kane, Nick Rhodes. Lots of options. Alexander Ramsey along with Adam Jones. Michael Torillo, let's toss it back to you. If you had to pick, we're going to stick it. I'm going to put you in a box, Michael Torillo. If you had to pick a strong safety to take here, and yes, this is a comeback for what you did to me in Atlanta with Pier 1 Imports. If you had to pick a strong safety here for Fort Worth, who are you taking?
Well, despite the fact that I am already in a box.
There you go.
If you're putting me on the spot, I mean, I thought this the first time that Fort Worth came up. I thought they were going to take Julian Valliere. They didn't do it. I'm going to stick with my guns. I'm going to say they're going to go with Julian Valliere at strong safety.
Man, Torillo, big fan of Julian Valliere. I don't know if that'll be the pick or not, but if it is, Mr. Torillo, we could see an NFL situation where you go from drafting to becoming a GM somewhere. If not, then we're all going to remember that, and wherever Valliere's career ends up, we're always going to look back to you, Mr. Torillo, and who knows, you might be his biggest believer. But in terms of this pick for Fort Worth, we know Stephen Hacker, Nacho Sicario, and Robert Garrett Jr. have done a lot of work on these draftees with the bevy of picks that they, potentially have. And, strong safety is an interesting spot to go. Let's see if that is the selection. The pick is in plenty of opportunity, and it's time for someone to live out their dreams. Mr. Irvine, who you got?
With the 56th pick of the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Fort Worth Toros select fullback Chris Comisac,
Wow.
Duncannon, Pennsylvania. Portland is on the clock with the 57th selection.
Liam Crowder just jumped in his chair as he thought he might have been put on the clock randomly. Portland's on the clock, though, and it's Chris Comisac for the Fort Worth Toros. Comisac, a fullback in the minor leagues. Mr. Hackett, talk to me a little bit about the impact that he made. I remember hearing his name a couple times.
Yeah, you sure did. He was one of the most used fullbacks in the minor league. There are 8 teams in the league. Half of them used their fullback a lot. Half of them didn't. And some of the guys that Chirillo's been mentioning all night long or some of the other most commonly used ones. But Chris Comisac is a really good dude. I've gotten to talk to him a little bit in advance of the championship game that his Ottawa Cavalry were playing in. And he caught a 72-yard touchdown pass in that game. So he's got some breakaway speed. He's got some breakaway ability in terms of the ability to shed tackles, good hands as a fullback. But he's a great blocker. That's really where he excelled on the field. And he's a good guy off the field as well. Really interesting. He's a family man, if you will. And he's been really supportive of his team during the chat. He's one of the most active guys on the YouTube chat during the game, or has been over the course of the minor league season. So that's the type of guy you're getting in Chris Comisac. He's a guy that will support the team. I'm sure that stood out to the Fort Worth guys, including Robert Garrett, who got to see him a couple of times game planning against him with the Boise Mud Dogs in the minor leagues. So I'm sure that he's going to make a good impact off the field for Fort Worth as well.
Well, and there you have on the right side in the chat, Mr. Komisak saying hook 'em horns, and David Harrell welcoming him right there. 2 rookies. I mean, just stepping in and making an impact. Johnny, you did that last season, stepping in from the number 1 overall spot and making an impact in this SFL. How important is it to first off get drafted, but then go make something of that pick?
Oh yeah, you don't want to let your team down. You don't, there's a lot of pressure that comes with, a pick like that. You want to be impactful. I want to, congratulate Chris. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, didn't he have that, like 80 something or 79-yard touchdown catch in the minor league championship game?
Yep.
Out of the fullback spot. I mean, I had fun watching him, throughout the minors. He's a playmaker, making big plays when it comes to him. I think that, he's going to have a good time in Fort Worth. I respect the leadership over there in Fort Worth. I think it's a good pick. I don't think it's I don't know if it's going to be a good enough pick come week 10, when they have to travel to Houma, Louisiana. But, I think it's a good pick.
Watch out for another 70-yard fullback touchdown.
Gonna get him right back there.
Might have been one of the greatest plays I've ever seen. Like, how does a fullback get that far open down the field?
It was pretty nasty. It was amazing.
Yeah, a great play. I mean, and an all-time play for the fullbacks of the SFL. We just saw Phoenix Jones convert from fullback to halfback. So there's room in this league for fullbacks to make a major impact, whether it's stepping into another position or at the fullback spot, as we saw there. And now when we move to Portland, they have a fullback in Jacob Farmer who's starting from base copper. But Eddie, when you kind of look across this team, no secondary members. Tell me, I mean, you got to be going safety here, right?
I don't know how you don't. I mean, come on. I'm going to have to give him a call after the show and find out what he's thinking over there because, dude, strong safeties, we're the bread and butter of the secondary. Come on, man. Don't disappoint me too much longer.
Yeah, I mean, free and strong, both being open. I mean, Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit. Have you? I mean, St. Louis comes to mind as a team that didn't run a strong or a free safety. They did have one strong safety, but I don't know if there's ever been an SFL team that hasn't run at least one safety.
Yeah, I don't. Well, no, that was no corners. Back QCC used to run no corners.
I do remember
back in the day, and they were pretty successful with that. But no, I don't think there's been any team that's run no safeties. So I like Eddie here. I think they got to go safety, either the free or strong variety. Looking at the board, see who's still available. Nick Rhodes at strong safety. Still a big name up there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm.
Now I see what it is. He doesn't want Valier to go to Portland. I don't know what the fleet did to you, Mr. Torillo, but I think
those missed check-ins.
Well, this one will be Valier. Now that I know that Michael Torillo doesn't think that's where he's going. The pick still coming in for Portland. They're using all their time. Well, there you go, right on time. The selection is in for the Portland Fleet. Up in the Pacific Northwest, Mr. Bouvette and Mr. Lozano have the pick. Let's send it over to Cameron Havron.
Torillo's looking awesome. I'm a little upside down by how this draft has
gone. There he is. Oh,
yeah. I was just saying, Andy, I'm a little upside down by the way this draft has been going so far. So,
it's flipped me all over the place.
The world's turned upside down.
With the 57th pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select strong safety Shad Allen, Atlanta, Georgia. London, you're on the clock with the 58th pick.
Well, there you go. Sean Allen, the selection, Eddie. They do end up going strong safety, and you got to like that pick. A lot of value on the board. I've seen him on Twitter. He was being very patient on Twitter with getting his selection. He knew he would fall to the right team, and Portland is that team.
It is, and they got a good one. I see him in chat too, and I see him on, as you mentioned, on social media. He's a character, and they got a good one.
And Tim, playing for Ottawa, he did. What did you see out of him in the minor league season?
I couldn't wait for some strong safeties to get drafted because I don't know if I love the position as much as Eddie clearly does, but I loved watching these guys in the minor league because there were so many that were so impactful in all kinds of different ways. And Sean Allen was one of my favorites. He was, I think, for my money, the best strong safety overall. I think there were a couple that were better tacklers, maybe some that were better in coverage individually, but he is the complete package. He's got great range, great hands, good end-to-end ability, good level-to-level ability. He was a guy that played along with the linebackers or along with the free safety, depending on what the play called for. So he's a guy that can do absolutely everything. He was an absolute blast to watch, one of the stars of the defensive side of the ball in the minor league this season.
Well, and as a broadcaster, I don't know about you. I don't know about you guys, Michael Torillo, Tim Hackett, or even Eddie does a lot of broadcasting. Shad is just a great first name. Let's break it down to what really matters here. What a first name, right? It's just incredible. And Allen, is a great last name. It just rolls off the tongue. Johnny, I know safeties are not your favorite type of people in the league as a quarterback, but this pick, it's got to be a good one.
100%, man. I'm looking right here at his value, and I know it's not all about the numbers, but I think you can't deny, his value for this point in the draft. I think it's a steal at a defensive back. I think that he's no doubt going to have an impact right off the bat, and like you guys said, he's a fun guy to watch in the minors. He's a playmaker, and and I'll definitely be, keep an eye out of where he is on the field, if we ever have to cross paths.
Absolutely. And now the London Knights are on the clock. Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit about what Liam Crowder across the pond might be thinking about with this selection here. They have had a really solid draft, from start to finish, London has. But where might they be going with this 58th selection?
Well, they may be going defensive line here. Defensive tackle or defensive end would be a good selection. You've still got plenty of good DNs out there. Dougie Mosley probably being the best out of all of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the selection.
Well, and this pick will close out the Knights draft. So, Eddie, you didn't have a pick this year, but talked, in the first 4 rounds, that is, once we get into the supplementary draft, it's, no holds bar. But talk to me a little bit about, how, making an impact with the first pick is important, but I think the last pick is almost just as important to get the right guy.
Teams who make the playoffs tend to have great first and second round selections. Teams that make it a deep run into the playoffs, be it the third, fourth, and even here the supplementary rounds, comes from teams who've done their due diligence, interviewed all the candidates available at the position that they needed, and drafted the right guys, because those teams that be needs that are deeper in the draft, who makes, those deep playoff runs. So I agree.
Great point. Let's send it over to the desk to Commissioner Cameron Irvine for the pick from London. I have an answer for you. It might not be the right one, but I have one.
Oh no! Are you serious? I just saw that myself.
Oh, that's a picture of one of my picks there, Michael Percoco. Yeah. But Cam, I don't know if you have a second to come back, because I have a question for you. Are you ready to get Iggy with it?
Fullback. I'm going to have some sort of song when I do a London game. Let's go.
Well, there you go. Iggy Swift comes back to London. The fullback for the London Knights rounds out this Knights team through the front of this draft as they head into the supplementary. Tim Hackett, talk to me a little bit about Iggy and try and not work through what Cam said, even though the chat could not hear him. The chat was Cam was commenting chat on my picture of Michael Percoco, holding up a picture of me from round 1. If you want to see that, you can head over to the first round of the draft. But Mr. Hackett, please break down Mr. Iggy Swift in this pick for London for me.
This is the closest thing to an Inception moment that we're going to get here in the SFL, I think, so we're going to relish it. I love Iggy Swift. He has a really awesome story. He named his player in the SFL after a friend of his that was in the Special Forces that passed away. So he thought, what better way to honor the memory of his friend than to bequeath his name upon his players. So he's a South Carolina guy, so I got to respect him. And as a fullback, like I said, for Comisac, good blocker. That was kind of his bread and butter, but he was, I think, the best pass-catching fullback in the minor league. I don't know if that was how his build shook out or if that's just kind of how things fell for him in the offense that they ran. But that was, to me, kind of what I saw from a scouting perspective. He's got great hands, good runner, kind of fitting for his name. And I thought that fullback could be something that London targeted here. I thought maybe they had some more pressing needs, but clearly, I mean, it's not really a surprise knowing Liam, what he was saying the last day, how he values fullbacks more than offensive line, certainly. So if that was, but I don't know that was the final determination, but if it was, then that's not a surprise that that's where they went and we get another fullback in the major leagues.
Well, and an interesting point about him being a pass-catching back. I know Liam Crowder just converted a wide receiver to a running back, so potentially the pass game being very important for London, even out of the backfield. Let's swing it over to you, Mr. Gage. In terms of the London Knights, do you like what they're doing in the backfield?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. They lost Reggie Streeter, so they had to replace him. They chose not to do it through the draft, but rather through free agency, bringing in a former player from Florida, and then converting him from receiver to tailback, which he did before. So he'll be comfortable doing so. It's going to take him a while to build him up, but they're going to give him some help by giving him a lead fullback. So what a better way to do it, give him some help than to give him a teammate in the backfield, blocking for him.
Yeah, it's always good to have teammates. I tell you what, this broadcast, if it were just me, not the five of us, would be pretty rough because people don't like listening to me. But they, what they do is like listening to Mr. Johnny Pickler. Johnny, you guys traded this pick to Fort Worth here, and we're really going to start getting into a string of picks for Portland, Fort Worth, and St. Louis as we roll through the end of this draft. But in terms of the 59th pick, where do you think Fort Worth might be looking?
I think that I honestly don't know. I think they might go offense to secure another weapon.
Sure.
I don't see why not before the value falls off. But at the same time, I mean, defense does win big games, and you need that to keep your boys on the field. So I'm kind of torn right now. I'm looking at Fort Worth roster, and it's coming together, and I just don't know which way they're going to go on, which side of the fence to lean on right now.
Let's swing over to Michael Torillo. Mr. Torillo, when you look at this Fort Worth roster, their needs are listed as defensive tackle, strong safety. Do you think defense might be something they target here?
Well, I'm surprised they still don't have a strong safety on their roster. So I think, again, that's where they're going to go. It's been a theme tonight of, strong safety has been a big part of everybody's draft.
Yeah.
But it's an important position. You're spying the running back at points. You're dropping back in coverage at points. It's a really versatile position. So I think they have to take it here.
Do have a couple more picks coming up for Fort Worth, including the top pick in the 4th round, number 67. So, they have time to address this need. But Eddie, do you think this is something they got to do right now?
I would hope so. I mean, given there are some players left, but you want to get the most value for these players they're going to be playing key positions as well. So something to keep in mind.
Well, the pick is in. Wait no more. We'll send it over to Cameron Irvine at the podium for the selection for the Fort Worth Toros.
Apologies to Iggy Swift if he couldn't hear me announce his selection, but I'll send him a personal, private selection.
I was going to say, what are you sending him?
Yeah, no, just audio,
Oh, okay.
But yeah, good on Iggy. You'll be drafted when many will not, so congrats to you, sir. With the 59th pick of the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Fort Worth Toros select strong safety Delaney Nash, Amarillo, Texas. St. Louis is on the clock with the 60th pick.
Eddie, a strong safety, and I tell you what, man, I'm blowing you out of the water. You need more generic players. Otherwise, you're never going to keep up with me in the later rounds of this draft. Another member of the Vancouver Legion off the board, now through the minor league. Delaney Nash, strong safety. They got a good one in Fort Worth, and how does that bolster their defense?
Well, it helps, like I said earlier, if you're going to play some of these more complex defensive styles, as I like to do, you need a back end that can cover one-on-one. If you're going to be provide any kind of zone blitzing or press man, things like that, you need guys who can cover and do multiple things. So Fort Worth filled a need that they desperately needed, and got their guy.
Tim Hackett, let's swing it over to you. 21 weeks banked for Delaney Nash. Had secondary builds at receiver, fullback, ends up going with the secondary build of strong safety. This is kind of a steal for the Toros.
Yeah, I guess when you put it like that, that's a really good point, because there's really not a whole lot of opportunities left at tight end. We saw a couple of tight ends taken a few picks ago ahead of Delaney Nash. Obviously, his primary position in the minor leagues with Boise, but it's just somebody that I've gotten to talk to, once or twice, working on some broadcasts. He does stats. He's learning how to do some other things in the league, if you will. So if he sensed that maybe there isn't any more opportunity for him as a tight end, this was the last spot for him as strong safety. So I don't know how his secondary build stacks up with everybody else's primary. I thought there were loads of other good, strong safeties available. But if his secondary is better than some of theirs at primary, and he's already got the relationship with Rob and maybe some of the other guys through the minor leagues, then I understand why they would jump and take him at his secondary position.
Yeah, great points there. And, as we kind of move into this next selection for St. Louis, they do have 4 picks, including this one, left in this draft. Michael Torillo. Sorry, Eddie, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but some offensive selections still need to be made for this Gladiators team. A running back, a second wide receiver. Are these things that they need to address right now? Because the value's fallen off this board quickly.
Yeah, I think they need to address running back right now, because you mentioned there's not much value left, and you got to take the running back who's going to be getting a lot of touches both in the passing game and in the rushing game. Fox Highwind's off the board. I think you got to go with either Kevin Say or Ezekiel Love here. Maybe Laura Horrell if you're going down the draft board a little bit, but you've got to take running back here.
Yeah, I agree with Love. I think he's an interesting option there, 22 weeks banked. Say also a good option with 20 weeks banked. Both of them have missed at least 1 week. Ezekiel Love has missed 3. But when you look at how much value that is in comparison to potentially, Micah Dillon, who's down there with 17 weeks banked, even without those 3 weeks that Ezekiel Love missed, he's still 1 week banked more. And like Johnny was saying, it's not all about value, but it certainly comes into play. Johnny, you were with Diesel Dawson in St. Louis last year. How important is that strong running game?
Ooh.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, Diesel. I mean, he was a workhorse for us last year, and he's going to be missed by the entire league. He was a power back. I mean, there's not too many that are bred like him that are left among us. And he was great at what he did. I do think St. Louis needs to go running back. Very soon. I mean, the fact it's about the personal connection with these guys. I do see Kevin Say, Ezekiel Love, Laura Horrell, Catherine Horrell, even, Mika Dillon, Martinez, all of these guys, have a decent amount of value on the field. And while they're in this building stage, I think they could take a chance with any of them, as long as they believe in them as an individual. And if that's the case, if it's someone, in the ladder that I named, I mean, I think that they could go elsewhere. They could go get their wide receiver 2 or 3 right now before that value falls off the board. I mean, if their running back's a little bit hidden right now and we're not seeing it for some reason, I mean, why not wait on it?
Yeah, no, some really good points, and I think that's something that we'll look at right here. But very interesting, to talk about them potentially missing on a running back, especially if their guy gets taken at a secondary position. But we will not wait for very long. The pick is in, and we're going to head over to the desk with Commissioner Cameron Irvine.
With the 60th pick of the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the St. Louis Gladiators select fullback Bill Cherry, Emporia, Kansas. Fort Worth's on the clock with the 61st selection.
Well, Mr. Hackett, let's swing it over to you. Usually the cherry is what you add on top after you have a nice Sunday. No running back in the backfield, but they put the cherry on top already. Bill Cherry, the pick here for the Gladiators. Your thoughts?
I love the puns, by the way. I know this is your forte, so keep it up. But it's interesting that they're building around this core instead of building the core. So I think that they're hoping that the running backs that are still there, and Trillo gave you a rundown on, and Trillo and Johnny kind of gave you a rundown of everybody that's still available. I am guessing that St. Louis is banking on the fact that they will still be available, whether it is Ezekiel Love or Kevin Say, the top two for me, or somebody else, if you will. They've got 2 or 3 more picks left today alone, so maybe they're banking that they're going to be able to take a running back later on. There aren't nearly as many fullbacks still available, so if they were confident that they needed a fullback to help augment the rest of the offense, now they've got a starter at least everywhere besides running back. They got their quarterback yesterday, and today they've got and their wide receiver 1, an Eagle Mondavi, and today you add to that a fullback and a tight end. So all that you need is the running back to be that cherry on top, like you were saying, to help spearhead the rest of the offense. I still think that maybe Kevin Say later on to join his former Ottawa teammate Javier Vasquez in St. Louis, but we'll see. If they wanted to try to fill out the rest of the offense, this is a way to do it.
Well, and Eddie, Bill Cherry comes in with 8 weeks banked. When you look at some of these halfbacks with 20 weeks banked, I think the immediate thought might be, oh, well, I put in a lot of time in the minor leagues. Shouldn't I just be automatically drafted as a high pick in the SFL draft? And I think what rookies and what, newer people to the league who are going into next season's draft might want to take note of is that it's not always about how many weeks banked you have. It's also about the personal connection. Like Johnny said before the pick, talk to me a little bit about how much that makes as a difference for an owner.
Absolutely. And just to give you a hint, I myself was talking to Bill Cherry, but it wasn't because of his use as a player, but more so his use of what he'd do for the team. He does a lot of things off the field that St. Louis is probably looking at themselves, and he's going to bring some value to them because he's able to do a multitude of things other than just being a player. So I'm sure that's what they had in mind when you look at the fact he only has, limited check-ins.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important, especially, for guys who haven't been picked at this point. I think, the CJ Arthurs, the Derek Majors, the JQs of the world, who, potentially could still be on the board, don't get discouraged. I think a lot of these guys, oh, there you go. As you, sorry to cut myself off. You have Walker, Texas Ranger over there making the selection here for Fort Worth. I love the hat. I mean, that's beautiful. Does it get any better than that? Come on. But when you talk about value, that personal connection, sometimes can be more important.
Yes.
And so I think what every draftee should strive for is both, right? You should strive for the value, but also strive for the personal connection. And the two creates the combination and the nucleus for a great player. But let's move forward to Fort Worth, the Toros here. Michael Torillo, what might, Woody there, the GM, might be looking for with this pick?
Well, first off, now I need to see Charles Doherty eat a cowboy hat. And second off, I think that Fort Worth still needs to go defensive tackle here. And there's still a venerable who's who of defensive tackle primaries on this board. A.K. Jones, Igor Berbatov, Derwin Nuevo, even though he's missed 2 check-ins. It still could be someone you would look at. It's probably, besides running back, the most stacked list of players still available at any position.
Yeah, no, very good points. And I agree with you. I think defensive line for this Fort Worth Toros team might be something of interest. And I like the way that Fort Worth has, battled back with this kind of defense that they've built. They have some good players here that they've, selected to play for this new franchise. And when building a franchise, it's good to build those cornerstones, whether it be Ben Stone, that pun actually wasn't intended, or David Harrell, a lot of good pieces here for the Fort Worth Toros, just like they have a lot of good hats. I mean, you kind of said it there, Torillo. I think Fort Worth is leading the Dallas Metroplex in terms of hat choices, but can they lead come the end of the draft in terms of draft choices? Tim, I think this is an interesting pick for Fort Worth, but they do have a couple more throughout the rest of the draft here. They're picking at 61. They'll pick again at 64 and at 67. So some interesting picks here. Who do you think they go with?
It's interesting. I'm with Trujillo that defensive tackle is definitely still an opening. They don't have a single one on the roster, but what's interesting, if you look straight up at value, everybody that's left on the board at that position is ranked the same. So to me, it goes back to what we were talking about with the last pick. Who you can pick here really depends on who they know as being the best person or the person that they are most interested in bringing into the fold. And that's something that I've learned as a newcomer to the league over the last day or so. So everybody is more or less the same, if you will, fingers in quotes. And so it depends on who's made the biggest impact to the brain trust on a person-to-person level and whoever's going to help the team off the field.
Well, I don't know how that big brain fits in the cowboy hat, but I wonder if Commissioner Irvine has a cowboy hat on. Let's send it over to the podium.
That would have been amazing if I pulled out a cowboy hat right in that moment. That would have been amazing, Andy, if I would have pulled out a cowboy hat.
Come on, man.
With the 61st pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Fort Worth Toros select defensive end Joey Schwint, Empire, Michigan. Portland back on the clock with the 62nd selection.
Great pick for Fort Worth, Mr. Schwint. I talked to him prior to the draft. Great guy, wanted to make an impact on a franchise, gets to do it here in Fort Worth. Johnny, talk to me a little bit about this Fort Worth team and how, coming into a new franchise, Joey Schwint can make an impact for them.
Yeah, like you said, you talked to him, Andy. I know that, we in Louisiana, we had some people talk to him as well, and we gave him nothing but good scores across the board. He seemed like a dedicated individual. We thought that he was a great guy. He was definitely a candidate. He was near the top of our list when it came to, defensive linemen. I know he's a younger kid as well. I think, he's about 16 or 17. He's getting an early start in the league. I think, young guy, dedicated, also young franchise in Fort Worth. I think it's going to be a good match. I think that he'll grow, and I think that franchise will grow together. And I think that, he'll be something special, years to come.
Well, Eddie Gage, he may be young, but why does he look more ripped than I do already? That's kind of messed up if we're being straightforward. Schwint, a great pick here for Fort Worth, flexing on everyone else.
Reminds me of Aiden Davis when I look at them. They look about the same age. They might be brothers.
There you go. Yeah, that's an option. But your thoughts on the pick, defensive end for Fort Worth to fortify that front seven?
As they just talked about, it was a need that they needed to fill. They've been addressing defense these past couple of rounds here, and wisely so. So I'd like to see them get at least one other defensive lineman to shore up their front seven. But so far, I can't complain about the results of Fort Worth's draft thus far.
Hackett, another primary pick. What did Schwint do in the minor league that would be noteworthy that the fans should take note of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Yeah, it's interesting that now we've got two defensive ends for Fort Worth, no defensive tackles. We've seen a couple other teams build like that. So to kind of augment Gary Marks, their earlier pick at a secondary position, if he can be that pass rusher that he showed his ability to be as a linebacker, if he can move that rush ability and tackling ability, especially to the defensive line spot, then you can buttress that with Joey Schwint to kind of hold down the fort and be more of a run stopper on the defensive end, be more of a stay-at-home guy, if you will. That could be a really good 1-2 punch. And we've seen a couple of teams over the last couple of days build both of the exterior parts of their defensive line entirely from rookies. So some teams have gone one veteran, one rookie. Now another team has gone with two rookies. So I think that could make for a really interesting dynamic. And I've said before, I love Gary Marks. And if he can transition to be a really good defensive end, there's your defensive end one. And now you've got your two in Joey Schwint. So maybe that can be a good 1-2. And as we mentioned, Joey's a young guy. I think he really loves the league from what I've heard through Mike and Proda, my partner in the minor leagues, and so in high school he's in high school right now. So if he could continue to build himself and build his player for years to come, then this could be a good long-term pick as well.
Well, Michael Torillo, from the wild, wild west and cowboy hats to the high 7 Cs, we go to the Portland Fleet here, who have like we talked about with all these teams here at the end of the draft, quite a few picks stockpiled and quite a few options to go through here to finish out their teams through these rounds. Where do you see Portland having areas of need at this point in the draft?
Well, they've got some defensive needs, defensive end and free safety. But I wouldn't be surprised if they take a kicker here or at some point for their picks for the rest of the night. We've seen kickers be impactful in many different ways. They're usually your team's highest scorers throughout the course of a season. So looking at the kickers that are still on the board, Amy Shalizzi is still there. So is Cliff Allen and Nico Cappuccino.
Yeah, and a good point there. The team needs list a free safety. Devin King up here sitting with 22 weeks banked, no weeks missed. A former member of the Vancouver Legion. I'm really trying to put Eddie in the dirt tonight. Has a secondary build at free safety. Could be a fit here for the Portland Fleet. Eddie, first of all, how do you feel about getting dominated when you brought up, your first pick first? But second of all, then for this Fleet team, would free safety make sense here?
Well, first of all,
I'm about to learn today, aren't I?
First of all, I had 2 players, former Scorpions, get drafted yesterday, along with today's action. But moving on, that would be a steal at this point in the draft. This late into the draft, getting a guy with 22 weeks banks. Oh my goodness, come on! I mean, I see why they're moving in silence over there in Portland, and I like that. That would be a good move for them should they choose to do so.
Yeah, that would be an interesting selection, especially for Bouvette, who could use some value on that defensive side to pair with, the strong. I'm going to say it, the strongest linebacking core in the Simulation Football League. With Davis Takes and Frank Champion, all 3 who were linebacker number 1s for their franchise, coming over to this expansion franchise in Portland. That's really where they built their core. They brought back a veteran quarterback, so adding a young member on the secondary could help. We could also see them go special teams. I think that's the other thing with some of these new franchises in the league is, you don't know where they're going to go exactly. So when you're looking at what positions they might need, you're just guessing, really. And, fortunately, we don't have to guess very much because Cameron Irvine is here with the selection. He's brought the note card to the podium. And I don't think he has a cowboy hat this time, but let's take a look.
With the 62nd pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select free safety Dakota Johansson, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. The 63rd selection belongs to St. Louis.
Well, it wasn't a member of the Legion, but as a member of Canada, I will still take the win there, Eddie. Michael Torilla, make sure you mark that up on the board. Johnny, a free safety off the board here for Portland. How does that help them out?
I mean, it definitely helps them. I mean, great call. You said, was that you, Michael, who said that they needed a safety and you thought that's where they were going? I think that, I think it, helps them tremendously. That's really all I gotta say. All I gotta say on this pick. I know that the only thing that's unfortunate for Portland is that they play Louisiana twice this year. And so I don't think there's you can draft as good as you're going to draft, but at the end of the day, that's 2 losses you can mark down on the schedule. But good pick. It made sense for them, and I'm all for it. I hope the guy has a great career.
Well, Johnny coming out of the gate there, swinging hard. Tim Hackett, a primary position here for Dakota Johansson, 11 weeks banked, 2 misses in there. Could have had a higher free safety. They went with Johansson, must have liked him a little bit, but talk to me a little bit about his on-the-field play.
With him over the course of the season if they're going to play twice. He's a fine player, really solid free safety for the Ottawa Cavalry, which had maybe the best team defense in the league. Across their secondary, all 4 of their starters were just fantastic on the ball. We talked about Shawn Allen at pick 57 to Portland, and now they add Dakota Johansson. So now they've got the entire Ottawa deep backfield to run the Portland backfield and fill 2 starting spots. So I think that is a really interesting little wrinkle in the draft. I love Shawn Allen, like we said, and he and Dakota Johansson were both really good on the ball, as well as Mo Austin, their number 1 corners. So they've got really good hands. Johansson has good coverage skills, good range, and he's a really good guy. So Ottawa was a fantastic minor league team, and You mentioned that they have a really good linebacker core. That's not a surprise to me. Nelson Lozano started in the minor league as a linebacker before he took this job as the GM for Portland, so he knows what good linebackers look like. He was a good one himself, and so now they're starting to work on their secondary. So the Ottawa secondary goes all the way to the west coast of the United States and becomes the starting Portland secondary. Interesting little development.
Johnny, John Trusman in the chat says he's coming for you as a halfback. I don't know how the two of you are going to collide on the field. I'm concerned about that, but I just wanted to let you know that he's thinking about you, and that matchup might be one that the league should start circling for TV notice, because there is some back and forth between these two franchises. So interesting there. But Michael Torillo, let's swing a little bit towards the Gladiators with their picks that they have left. Still running back, still wide receiver. I feel like, we swing this pendulum back every couple picks when they come back on the board. Some options for them as we swing here through the third round with pick number 63. Where do you think they might go? And do you dare say that they go running back again?
I do dare say they go running back again, even though I'm going to be wrong every single time. I'm going to keep hammering this point home. They've got to get a running back before the value falls off any further. Quick point I did want to note about Dakota Johansson. He has 10 tackles for loss as a free safety in this past minor league season. So aggressive free safety at that. So Portland's got themselves
pass deflections.
Exactly.
Shout out to that defensive coordinator who's put him in position to make those plays.
Yeah, 100% with that scheme.
But
look out, Johnny. You're in the backfield.
Back to St. Louis. It keeps baffling me that they haven't taken running back here yet. Still with Kevin Say on the board.
Yeah, Say, a good running back still on the board. Ezekiel Love still there. Let's swing it over to you, Mr. Gage. Let's say you're sitting in the owner's chair of this St. Louis Gladiators, and you got pick number 63 sitting in front of you. You got the card, you got the Sharpie. Who are you writing down?
I like both Kevin Say and Ezekiel Love. The 3 missed check-ins alarm me a bit about Ezekiel, but perhaps they were early in his career when he didn't quite understand the concept of getting those check-ins in. I don't know, but maybe, just maybe, I don't know, but they're thinking about, and I don't know their situation with all their contracts, but if all their signees have been max value people, they're looking at signing their running back in a supplemental draft. I don't know.
Selection is in. Let's head to the podium with Commissioner Cameron Irvine. The card is there with him, and hopefully a cowboy hat. Oh.
With the 63rd pick in the SFL's Season 15 draft, the St. Louis Gladiators select Amy Shalizzi, kicker, Marlborough, Massachusetts. The 64th pick is Fort Worth's.
Great selection there from St. Louis. I mean, it wasn't where we thought they would go, but Amy Shalizzi, as clutch of a kicker as it got in the minor league, Tim Hackett, talk to me a little bit about what impact she could make for the Gladiators.
Definitely right, Andy. When it comes to on-the-field impact, she was as good as they came in the minor league. Highest field goal percentage for somebody that wasn't perfect in terms of meaning 100% kick percentage, but her attempts were so much higher than anybody else that was 100%. So what I'm telling you is she was about as good as you get on the field. Very clutch, 2 different game-winning kicks that stood up to be game winners, I should say, specifically, including one that I know you saw, Andy. Or actually, I should say she had one attempt that could have been the game winner. That was her only miss in the entire minor league season. Was a kick that could have won Ottawa a game. So she's very clutch, used a lot, good range. And yeah, I'm surprised to see her still on the board here, but I wasn't sure if St. Louis would go kicker. I thought that they had some other pressing needs that we've talked about a couple of times already in this draft, but clearly they wanted a kicker and they have a really, really good one still on the board.
Yeah, an interesting, note there. The way I have always looked at it, and I think Mighty and Ramos are gonna roll in their chair and let me hear it in the chat. You don't need a kicker if you can put the ball in the end zone. And so, one thing I think St. Louis needs to kind of look at is, hey, you need a running back, you need a receiver. Yeah, it's great to hit a 52-yarder. It's better to get in the end zone or, get a first down. So something St. Louis will have to address with the remaining picks on the board, which they certainly can do. But Johnny, when you look at Amy Shalizzi, how does that impact the St. Louis locker room?
Well, I know. I think it's funny, and I don't know if anyone's noted it yet that we just drafted JoJo, Schlizzy, and that they just got Amy. So it's going to be husband
there you go.
versus wife in week 1. And to add to a lot more
Great note.
rivalry that Louisiana and St. Louis week 1 already has. Being me and we have 5 former Gladiators on our team going against St. Louis in week 1. Now we have husband and wife, versus each other in week 1. So Amy was on our board. We grabbed JoJo, and we knew that she would be a great complement to the locker room as well. We have a kicker as a need, and we thought that we would wait a little bit. And, St. Louis, maybe knowing that we just made that trade with with Fort Worth and that we have a pick coming up, maybe thought that we would be going for her. So maybe they snuck up there and just wanted to grab her real quick. I don't know, but it's going to be an interesting husband-wife battle in week 1. I mean, I think we all know who's going to take the cake in that one, but, I'll pass that one along.
Man, I tell you
That's
what,
awesome.
speaking of, great note, Johnny. And speaking of significant others, the significant other of free safety Nate Hall was in the chat saying that she was supporting him. And I don't believe that she's in this draft as a player. I think she is here as a fan. So hello to you, ma'am. And we love, families getting involved in the league, whether it be the Shalizzis or the Halls. While we are neutral here on this draft panel for the most part, although Johnny's pushing that limit sometimes. We hope Mr. Hall gets drafted here throughout the final portions of this draft. But let's look, now at Fort Worth, and I hope we got another shot of Mr. Garrett with the cowboy hat, or I think he had a cigar earlier, right, Eddie? And I mean, This guy's just rolling through props. I don't know if he, prepared for tonight or what, but I'm hoping the guys in the truck through the last round here, and by guys, I mean Cameron Irvine, throw us up a shot of him at some point. They got a lot of picks here to go. But Eddie, who are you looking at if you're Fort Worth and you've got another selection here?
Well, you know me, I'm a fan of the defensive line. It's a need that they have still, and that's the direction I would go in. Defensive tackle, get that nose guard up front who can, push that center back in the quarterback's lap. Also stuff the run game. Defensive tackle is the way to go here.
Yeah, that's a good shot. I mean, I think punter would still be super fun. We haven't seen one of them be selected. Michael Torillo, are you on board for the punter train?
Not quite. Maybe in the supplemental draft, we'll get to see some punters. I remember the first time that a contract punter was used, and it was used back in season 10. And I remember I have a lot of fun on some broadcasts calling those booming punts back in season 10. But I don't think they go punter here. I think they go, like Eddie said, defensive line, defensive tackle. I think I stated earlier in the broadcast that defensive tackle is the most deep position that's still available right now, with people like A.K. Jones and Igor Berbatov, and Gary Burney as well, who was the league leader in sacks in the SFLM.
And that's a very good point. And I think there's a lot of talent on this board for Fort Worth. And a lot of people, in the chat are interested. DJ Period says, I'll have my wife comment if it helps me get drafted. And I tell you what, DJ, if you can get my future wife to comment, I'll draft you in the supplemental round. I mean, that would be impressive. We would be also remiss if we did not mention that Waterboy Rich Pratchard is in the back helping Cameron Irvine with the draft production, mostly in getting him beverages. But we want to thank him for his service as well. And Cameron Irvine, back to the podium. Cowboy hat?
No.
Come on, man. Come on.
It's a lost cause.
Cause.
It's going to happen. If Robert Garrett Jr. has to ship that hat
Rich?
all the way over.
Oh, Rich is messing with me here in the studios. There's only one camera. With the 64th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Fort Worth Toros, so we're getting a little silly in round 3. The Fort Worth Toros select defensive tackle Catherine Horrell, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Portland back on the clock with the 65th pick.
Well, there you go, Johnny.
No, stop.
Tell him to go get you a cowboy hat. That's what we're looking for here. Johnny, we talked about families after the last pick, but another family member, Horrell, goes to Fort Worth. This is a good pick for them. I love it.
Yeah, how many Horrells does it leave for us right now on the board?
I think there's at least Beth Horrell is still there. There's at least one, right?
And Laura.
Laura's there too.
And Laura Howell.
And a couple other auxiliary members of the family.
Former Scorpion, Laura Harrell. Someone draft her immediately.
Eddie's trying to keep up. No,
yeah, I mean, I think she's gonna plug up the middle real well, and kudos to Fort Worth. I mean, it's fun seeing the game right here because it's St. Louis, Portland, and Fort Worth who know that it's just those three teams, and I mean, you gotta. There's no doubt they're looking at each other's draft boards right now as they're strategizing going forward, going to the end.
Yep.
Now, note that we have a pick coming up because we traded with Fort Worth. There's one more Louisiana pick coming up, but besides that, it's just these three teams that are finagling their way to the end, and they're going to be playing a little bit of gamesmanship going to the end. I'm just looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
absolutely.
Go ahead, Mr. Hackett. Yeah, what do you think the Fleet might do with this pick as we play Portland, Fort Worth, St. Louis, and Louisiana ball here, where the four teams are going to round out, potentially the next 6 picks?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to jump the gun a little bit, Andy, but sure. I think what Johnny said is right on. If defensive line is still something that I'm thinking that Portland should target. They've been working on their secondary for their last couple of picks with the 2 guys from the Ottawa defensive backfield. So they're looking at defensive line. As we mentioned, the overall value is all pretty much the same. So if Fort Worth decided they could get Catherine Horrell at her secondary position at defensive tackle, I'm sure that Portland has also been looking into that either for her or for somebody else. I have no idea. So either they try to do that and get somebody else to fill out the middle of the defensive line, or they go with a primary defensive lineman. As we've said, there are loads of good ones out there, people who are super effective at breaking up plays, rushing the passer, and stopping the run in the minor leagues. So I think that's absolutely something that Portland needs to target here, and maybe Fort Worth just stepped on their toes, but maybe they're ready for something different.
Man, that would be something too, in these last couple picks to select a person who the other team was looking to take. I mean, it really would take some effort because there's just so many quality players still on the board as options. So, Mr. Torillo, for the Fleet, do you want to take a shot in the dark here? Who are they taking?
Well, it would be a shot definitely in the dark. It's tough. I think maybe defensive end, potentially. It's wide open here as we come down towards the end of the round. I like Buggy Mosley as a defensive end if we go that route. I also potentially like Mike Baker as a defensive end.
Yeah, some good options there. And then you get into the kicker punter, and we're talking, again about the opportunity for an expansion franchise to, go a different route. If they were to go punter, there's also kicker on the board, and Nelson Lozano, Jacob Bovett, Mel Davis, and this staff for the Portland Fleet have got to be, really digging deep to figure out, what kind of team do you want to house, and what kind of build do you want to start your franchise off at? And Eddie, how important is build for these teams?
It's very important. It's going to establish your identity and, pretty much dictate how your offense is built and your defense is built. You can't just make up plays, based off the way you want it to go. It has to be based off the strength of your personnel. You can't go, 3 tight end sets and expecting to run smash mouth football when you only have 1-star tight end. It's just not going to be consistent. You got to build to the strength of your team. So that's definitely probably one of the more important aspects of football.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all your points. I think, the build is the building block for your team, and whatever you decide will perform best and be the most successful with your playbook, that's really what you have to attack, especially in a draft and an end of a draft like this, where you have so many picks in a row. This is an option and an opportunity for the Portland, Fleet to really make their mark on this draft. Put all hands on deck, if you will, and go get some of the guys that they think, guys or girls, that could make an impact for this franchise. Because there's a ton of them that are potentially on the board here as options. And that's the other hard part, is they're not just picking in front of or behind the teams around them, right? Portland's not just picking in front of St. Louis. They're also picking in front of the supplemental where, we reset the order and really kind of, reset who could go where. So The pick is in. Let's see what Portland has taken here with number 65. It sounds like they've taken Cameron Irvine. Oh, he's there.
With the 65th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select Derek Majors, cornerback.
Wow.
St. Louis is on the clock with the 66th pick, and Derek Majors hails from Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, well, we'd be remiss if we didn't send it to Mr. Chicago himself. Johnny Pickler. Derek Majors goes from quarterback over to cornerback. Make sure we clarify where he's going there. But a great pickup, and we take a look here. Oh, look at the dance going in there. Wow, what a dance from Majors. He waited, and his SFL career has been made here. I can't tell if he's trying to outdance Rosca or what, but a nice little move there. Oh, there's the point. That's definitely a Rosca move. 2 cornerbacks with dances and points on their draft looking. But Johnny, in terms of value, incredible value here for Portland. 28 weeks banked, none missed. Right here at the end of the third. What a grab.
Dude, what a grab completely, man. I mean, the fact is, the dude's an athlete. He's there with his baby girl, and I can respect that. I got 2 daughters. I'm from Chicago. This league has tons of Illinois talent. Hashtag Chicago talent, hashtag
That's
Illinois
right.
talent. And,
That's right.
and it's just nasty, man. And this guy's going to do work, and because he didn't get his spot at QB, he's gonna piss some QBs off in this league, and he's gonna grab some balls from him. And I'm rooting for him. Chicago guy. I'm Chicago blood through and through. I got to root for the guy. I love it. I love the pick, and clearly he's going to bring some swag to that town. And I have nothing to complain about it. It's a great pick for Portland.
There's the GM, Nelson Lozano, who just made the selection. I want to see him do a little dance. It doesn't look like we're going to get it, though, but I do also wonder what's in that tiny little door off to the left-hand side of him. It might be their draft plans for the rest of the draft, because they do have quite a few picks remaining here, and he's got to get to work. And
Yes.
Man, what a moment. What a moment. And, let's swing it over to Tim Hackett. Let's talk about Majors moving over from quarterback to cornerback. That's a big move for him career-wise. Do you think it's the right one?
Well, I know for sure, Andy, that he wanted to be in the SFL as soon as possible. He obviously is a championship winning player as a quarterback, playing back in his home city of Chicago, taking the Madison Lynx to the SFL M championship and winning there last week. But I know for a fact that he was disappointed that he hadn't been drafted sooner. As we've talked about, and as we know, there weren't very many spaces open for quarterbacks. It became apparent to him that he wasn't going to be able to play QB at the next level. And rather than, wait and maybe play later, he wants to play now and make an impact now. So he seizes the opportunity moving over to play the very confusingly named cornerback and try to make an impact. So I know for a fact that that is something that Derek Majors wanted to do. And he's somebody that his teammates speak incredibly highly of, one of the most draftable players in the Madison Lynx locker room, if you will. And I'm glad that he's finally got a spot.
Yeah, great selection of Majors. Commend Portland for sticking with him through all these rounds and finally making him a player in the Simulation Football League. I mean, that really, Michael Torillo, is a lot of these players' dreams is to get drafted somewhere. And for Majors, it just came true. And there's plenty of picks to go.
Yeah, and I think you need to start looking at the other quarterbacks from the SFLM that haven't been drafted yet and start looking at their secondary builds to see where they could potentially slot in other places. If not tonight, then in the supplemental draft on Friday and Saturday. Because there's still Cameron Curtis, JQ, Spencer Gordon, and PJ Slaughter that are still on the board that played quarterback in the SFLM. They're not going to get to do so in the big leagues, but they could have very big impacts at other places.
Yeah, PJ Slaughter, for one, could be a good option. Eddie here for the St. Louis Gladiators has a secondary build at wide receiver. Could that potentially be a fit? I tell you what, Slaughter would be a great last name for a wide receiver who could just kill you over the middle. Am I right?
You know what? You hit it right in the head. Not only Slaughter, but I also a current SFL player. With the favorite name I have the entire SFL, KL Barrett of Mexico City. He has a linebacker's name. I just love that about him. I've always wanted to say that on air, and I just did. Shout out to KL Barrett. But yeah, Kevin Slaughter, yeah, he got me thinking about the military guy now, yeah. But Slaughter, yeah, he'll be a great pickup for them as well. They need weapons on offense to round out this roster. They are loaded on defense, trying to get them some toys on offense as well.
Yeah, Mark Martin, Gene Valentine, Zach Lay. You know, a lot of opportunity here for some wide receivers. Michael Potter, Riley Quintero, Tim Hackett. Talk to me about some of the best offensive weapons that are still on the board.
There are loads of really good wide receivers still available, Andy. And if we're just focusing on primary builds, because we clearly don't know who might be available as a secondary, but I mean, just looking down some of these draft boards that I've been shown, I mean, you've got true number one wide receivers that are still available. St. Louis got their guy, number one wide receiver in Eagle Mondavi, who is that way for Albuquerque, and he's going to be that way at the next level. I think his value will be high enough. Don't know exactly how it works, but I think that is a possibility. So they need a possession wide receiver to work on the other side. They could go for Michael Potter and reunite the Albuquerque tandem in St. Louis. Maybe they go for Javier Vasquez's Ottawa teammate, Gene Valentine, who I think is a wide receiver one capability. And there's, of course, CJ Arthur as well, who might flex over to the other side and be a great speed threat, excellent slot type wide receiver if they choose to go that way. So if they're looking for wide receivers, now's a fantastic time because there are loads of great players available.
Let's see if Cameron Irvine has wide received that cowboy hat just yet. He's at the podium again.
I'm not going to keep coming on here if you're going to give me the hatch stick every time. I want Pickler's hat. That's what I want. That hat is awesome. Can you turn that around, Pickler? Can you turn that around for us? Show us what's on the front. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Torillo, you said that was one of your favorite logos in the league?
It's by far my favorite secondary logo. The L with the feather on the state outline, it's fantastic.
There you go.
Got a ball out for the boot, baby.
With the 66th pick in the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the St. Louis Gladiators select defensive tackle Igor Barbatov, Paris, France. Louisiana, you're on the clock with the 67th pick via Fort Worth.
Barbatov, the selection, and an interesting one here for St. Louis. Let's swing it over here to Tim Hackett. Tim, talk to me about Igor and how he could make an impact for these Gladiators team.
Well, this was one of the best defensive tackles from pillar to post in the minor league. Kind of fell off a little bit late, I guess, in terms of his production, but through the first 2/3 of the minor league season, Igor was the cream of the crop. You're gonna get, and there he is. He's happy to finally get drafted. I'm happy for him. The Frenchman is finally off the board, going to St. Louis.
My. Wow. And Tim, I hate to interrupt you. It is 3:01 a.m. there in Paris, France, and Igor is up. I love it, and I also love the hat on the background. I mean, that's exactly what everyone needs is a great hat on their wall. Igor Barbatov, St. Louis, you got to love it, and you got to love his dedication staying up this late.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that he wanted to be drafted, and we're going to get a look at some of his highlights from across the season. He was just absolutely a game wrecker, and he played it simple, starting on the defensive tackle one spot, the right side of the defensive line. There weren't too many star interior offensive linemen in the minor league, and Igor absolutely had his way with them through the first 2/3 of the season. I love this pick. Very powerful guy, big guy, strong, good push from the bottom, if you will, and he's very adept at breaking open a game. I think St. Louis has a couple of questions to answer on the offensive side still, but this really shores up the defensive side of the ball for him. I'm glad that they finally pulled the switch and took Igor.
Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit about the opportunity internationally in the Simulation Football League. Igor becomes a host of players from different nationalities and how the opportunity, in this league is abundant for everyone.
Yeah, and first off, that's two Lincoln Rattlesnakes defensive linemen drafted tonight in Mike All and Igor Barbatov. So good on you, Lincoln. But yeah, I mean, people in the SFL come from all walks of life, and they come from all over the world. We've had players in the past from Argentina, Australia, England, and now France, Canada as well. I mean, it's American football, as they call it in other places, isn't played to a extent, a lot of places in the world. And if you have a passion for it, like Liam Crowder does, we know that, and he doesn't get a lot of chance to see it, and even less chance to participate in it. So the SFL is a fantastic outlet for anybody who loves the game of football to get involved and live out their dreams.
Yeah, and a great opportunity here for Igor in St. Louis. And now the Louisiana Revolution on the clock. Eddie, when you look at this Revolution team, they've made splashes all season. Gerald Smith doing a great job of building this team, not necessarily from the ground up, but it felt like it at times as he scrounged and got this team ready. With 67, where do you think they could go?
At this point in the draft, it's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just guessing at this point. I mean, like you say, his rosters, he's done a great job in filling out. He's convinced guys come out of retirement and play for him. And so I don't know where he's going to go. Maybe he goes offensive line. At this point, who knows?
Yeah, lots of opportunity for Louisiana. Someone I know who might know is Mr. Pickler. We will get to him after the pick for immediate reaction because I don't want him to accidentally spoil anything. That would be the worst. So let's send it back to Mr. Hackett. When you look across Louisiana's roster, do you see any holes?
I think there are a couple of ways they could go. It depends on how important they find some of the auxiliary positions. So maybe they could go for offensive linemen. I also think kicker and fullback are available. But I think maybe also corner if they're looking for a more, accessible position. I think cornerback is another way that they could go, or maybe a backup safety. So, I realize I'm very much riding the fence here, but I think maybe either a kicker or a corner would be what I would put my money on.
Let's send it over to the podium. Commissioner Cameron Irvine is ready to make the selection.
I just have to say that I've been looking for my hat all night, and it turns out it was in France the whole time.
Wow.
So
unbelievable.
I don't know how that happened, but
you know
I
what
must
they
have
say,
been
when in
partying
Rome.
with Johnny maybe a little bit too much here lately. We got lost. We got lost in Europe, and I lost my hat. With the 67th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Louisiana Revolution select defensive tackle Deontay Wilder, son of Ross Napoli, Staten Island, New York. 68th pick belongs to Portland.
Well, there you go. Deontay Wilder, defensive tackle for the Louisiana Revolution. Johnny, I don't know if it's UFC, but does Mr. Wilder like throwing punches, and how will he do in the trenches for you guys?
Oh, man. Well, first off, I want to say, the commission made it clear. It's a father and son duo that we just grabbed right here with Ross Napoli and and I mean, this is Ross Jr. Wilder, and we've already been calling him that. I mean, it was our plan, and we're blessed to get both of them on our team. I mean, these guys are absolute class acts off the field. They are going to do so much to enhance our franchise for the long haul. And on the field, they're ready to get dirty. They are ready to make some noise. And you guys are going to, the fact that we started this draft with no defensive linemen, now we got a full stack of 4. I mean, Ross Sr., Ross Jr., Luther Gond. I mean, we have 4 studs on the line right now, and we're proud of every single one of them. And it's going to be a nasty, fun thing to watch for me every time I'm on the sidelines, because I know they're going to bail me out. And I know, every time someone puts a hit on me, all 4 of these guys are ready to put on lick on the other quarterback even harder.
Well, that'll start us in this 4th round. That was the first selection of the 4th round. Deontay Wilder to the Louisiana Revolution. And Eddie, talk to me a little bit about fortifying the front 7. Do you think that's a good pick for Gerald Smith?
You can never go wrong fortifying that front 7, as you just mentioned. I'm a big advocate of, having all 7 spots filled up if I could. Sioux Falls, they have 3 linebackers. There's another team I can't think of who has 3 also. And now it looks like Louisiana's on their way to doing the same thing. Listening to Johnny Pickler here talking. So we have to just sit back and see. But that front 7, they can dominate games once they were clicking and running on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Hackett, I believe Wilder played linebacker in the SFLM, if I'm correct. How did he do there? Do you think his skills will translate down to defensive tackle, or is Louisiana and Mr. Napoli himself going to be teaching his son quite a few tricks?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly could be. I think he's gonna learn a thing or two from Ross Sr., as it were. But yeah, I mean, appropriately enough, Deontay Wilder, the linebacker, was a fantastic hitter, very tough guy, pretty good range as well. Well, type of guy who wouldn't back down, knows how to get up after being hit, not going to stay down for the 10 count, if you will. And I'm curious to see him move down to defensive tackle. It's kind of a unique move here for Louisiana that Eddie just kind of hinted at. Just, from what I know, not every team in this major league runs 4 defensive linemen. Every team in the minor league did to try to get everybody some playing time and access, but not every team runs 4-star defensive linemen, and now Louisiana has 4 because of everything that they've done over the last couple of days, as Johnny just pointed out. So if they want to use Deontay Wilder as another tackle to work with Luther Gahn at his secondary position, now they've got 2 secondary defensive tackles to kind of continue the trend of what we've been talking about, trying to find higher value elsewhere. And now they've got the family connection to go there. And to echo Johnny, I love Ross Napoli. I think he's an awesome guy. Haven't gotten a chance to talk to his son necessarily, but if he's anything like his dad, then they're going to be an awesome duo to bring to Louisiana.
And now we have 2 father-son duos on our defense. We're proud of it, with Gerald and his son at linebacker, and now with Ross and his son at DT and DN.
Hey Andy, I'd like to ask a question for Deontay. He must be a boxing fan, so perhaps he needs to send the league a YouTube video or something of him yelling out "Bomb Squad."
Yeah, there you go. That would definitely be interesting, and I'm sure Johnny can get on that for Louisiana's social pages. That would definitely be a great post. Mr. Torillo, we're down to the nitty-gritty. 4 selections left, 3 of which belong to this Portland fleet. Talk to me a little bit about where they might go with 68. This is an important selection because after this pick, St. Louis picks, which is the last chance for anyone to steal in the next 4 selections, anyone from Portland. So they have to make the right pick here because they don't want St. Louis to take a guy.
Yeah, that is true, and that actually changes the point I was about to make. I would say they're going to take kicker, but St. Louis already took a kicker. So maybe they'll go with a defensive end or maybe even an offensive lineman here.
Interesting choices. I'd love to see an offensive lineman come off the board. They are very important and very entertaining. Cameron Irvine, let's hear from you and who Portland will take with number 68.
With the 68th pick in the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select wide receiver Gene Valentine, Grand Grove, Haiti. St. Louis is up with the 69th selection.
Wow, Grand Grove, Haiti. Congratulations, Gene Valentine, for coming into the Simulation Football League with the Portland Fleet. Tim Hackett, that's a primary selection. What did Mr. Valentine do to impress in the minor league? Because I've heard his name before, so I'm sure he has some highlights and something to talk about with how good he played.
Some highlights, Andy. This is a true wide receiver 1, and as we mentioned earlier on, for Portland, now they've got a couple of different guys that they can use. Portland added Connor Weston as a secondary position last night, and so now they've got Gene Valentine possibly as a wide receiver 1 or 2. I don't really know, but a fantastic weapon now for Matt South coming out of retirement for Portland. He's a guy that runs everything extremely well. They call him the gangster of love, and the Haitian was really just one of the best wide receivers in the minor league. Excellent possession guy. Doesn't have really many drops at all. Good yards per catch, and led the league in touchdowns. So knows how to convert and came through in big moments and had a really fantastic semifinal game for Ottawa against Annapolis to move his team into the final and then set a new record. I don't remember the stat exactly, but set a new individual high with 7 or 8 catches, I want to say, in the championship game after that. So big-time player, big-time performer, if you will, and just really an excellent wide receiver.
Yeah, and a good selection for Portland because, like I said, the wide receiver selection, potentially jumps in front of St. Louis here, who has the 69th pick, and takes an option for them at wide receiver. Johnny, let's say you had a wide receiver you liked a lot and they got stolen from you in the draft. I'm sure you wouldn't like that, correct? So for St. Louis, and important to get this 69th pick correct.
It's very important to get this pick correct. And it's still a mystery for me, with what St. Louis is doing. Although, again, I think that they've done their numbers, and I think that they don't mind leaving a couple. I mean, obviously, they only have one pick left, and they had 2 receiver spots to fill, a running back spot to fill. And it's throwing the rest of the league, kind of in and awe. I know if Ray Bentley was with us, he would do one of his mad screams right now, not knowing, knowing that they haven't picked any of those spots, but. A supplemental draft, remember, for teams like St. Louis who, have signed all of their guys to a max value so far, they're going to be allowed to bring these guys up to very high values. I mean, they could sign a wide receiver and bring him up and make him the most valuable receiver in the draft, and it could be very sneaky. And so I think that, I wouldn't, sleep on anything that they're doing in St. Louis. I think that they've done their homework. I think they got some really good minds over there. But, I am very curious to see what they're going to do here.
Yeah, very interesting. In a way, one of the more intriguing picks of the draft is this last pick for St. Louis. Michael Torillo, does it got to be a halfback? Does it got to be a wide receiver? Or like Johnny said, could they play a little bit of the long game here?
Well, man, they've been holding this running back spot over our heads all night long, and every time we say they've got to take a running back, they don't take it. They go somewhere completely different. So who knows if they're going to go for running back in supplemental, or they have a different plan for their backfield this season. If they do go for a wide receiver and do maybe something that Pickler said, I'm looking at maybe Benjamin Warner or Paul Dilivo as well as wide receivers that could come off the board. I think the best player in the draft right now that hasn't gone off the board yet is A.K. Jones, the defensive tackle, but they're so stacked on defense, I think they have to look offensive side of the ball here.
Eddie, it got to be offense, right? I mean, as a coach and an owner, would you, potentially put yourself in a situation where you're relying on the supplemental cap to assist you in this situation on purpose?
The only thing I can think of, perhaps, other than what I said earlier about them drafting a running back in a supplemental round, is doing what Queen City did last season and rolling with the fullback as they did as their primary ball carrier, and then perhaps transitioning him over to tailback in season 16.
Well, Cameron Irvine is at the podium. Let's head over to him for this very nice pick.
With the 69th pick of the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the St. Louis Gladiators select wide receiver Ryan Owens from Boston, Massachusetts. Portland has the final 2 picks of the night.
Well, there you go, Tim Hackett. Wide receiver, it is an offensive position, but not necessarily, the one that we thought was the biggest, potential gap in their offensive team. Ryan Owens, though, a good selection here for the Gladiators.
I have 2 thoughts here, Andy. My most common insight is null and void because this is another secondary pick, so I can't tell you anything about Ryan Owens' tape. He was a cornerback in the minor league, a very good cornerback, but I have 2 thoughts on this. First off, I want to jump back to something Chirillo was saying. Last pick, Portland took Gene Valentine, the Ottawa Cavalry wide receiver, and Javier Vasquez is now the quarterback and the offensive coordinator for St. Louis after it was announced last night. So maybe that was an option for St. Louis at pick 69 if they were truly interested in wide receiver. That went off the board the pick prior. Now, second point is that Portland now has the next 2 picks, and yesterday they took Connor Weston, and Connor Weston is Ryan Owens' brother. So maybe they were looking at Ryan Owens for a primary position at corner or at secondary. Clearly, he could play wide receiver. I don't know. So if Portland was looking to snag Ryan Owens to join his brother in the last 2 picks of this round, I don't know. This is just speculation. But now they've both maybe stepped on each other's toes in turn here with these 2 picks. So I don't know. That's just a complete supposition on my part. But I think it would be awesome if one or both of those were true. I like Ryan Owens. He's a good guy. He's from Boston. Really good hands as a corner this past year in the minors. Good coverage skills, really good tacklers. So if he can bring some of those ball skills to the wide receiver position, then Javier Vasquez is going to have another weapon. That was clearly a need. Obviously, running back is still a very pressing need for them, but they get their wide receiver too.
There must have been something that they really loved about this kid, because there is so much more value in the secondary positions at wide receiver. So he must have wowed them in his interviews.
Yeah, I think it's important, with the last pick of your draft to make sure you get a guy who wows you, especially with that pick. So very important for, the Gladiators to nail that. Michael Torillo, a nice pick for St. Louis.
Yeah, man, you put me in the most awful spots because I see the chat. I see them going crazy, especially my Skyhawks brethren. Yeah, this is an interesting pick because, as Tim said, Portland and St. Louis have been at odds over the past 10 minutes or so, and maybe a rivalry brewing between them for taking each other's picks potentially. And now we see Portland with the last two. The board is wide open for them. It's clean sailing for the Fleet here as we head into the final two picks. They can really go anywhere.
Yeah, there you go. They could go anywhere. The only thing I would say is, hey, look out for icebergs at this point. Johnny, when you look at Portland quarterback Matt South coming on to the team, do you think they have enough weapons on the offensive side of the ball?
I think, it will be interesting to watch Portland play this year, with Truzman's move over to halfback. I actually, I actually am really, I believe in Truzman. I think that he's going to do some damage. I think that, they're going to learn to have to lean on Truzman and be a really balanced offense, because of the fact of, they don't have that star power, in the receiving core right off, that other teams do. I think that they're going to be a balanced team on both sides of the ball. It's going to be interesting. I want to know where they're going with their last two picks. I'm trying to be politically correct right here, but I do see they're going to be an expansion team. I think that's going to have to build. If I'm going to be frank, about it, I think that it's going to take a year or so. I don't see them being a playoff team this year. I look forward to wiping the floor with them in week 5 and week 11.
Johnny, you don't pull any punches. Don't start now.
Why would I, right?
Come on, Johnny, man. They still got 2 picks to go before they even have a 17-man roster. How do you know if they're going to the playoffs or not?
Yeah, unless they can draft Superman and Batman, they're not going to get past us in week 5 and week 11.
Well, unfortunately, Superman doesn't have a secondary build that the Portland Fleet can utilize. So let's see from Cameron Irvine who the Fleet have selected.
I give up.
With the 70th pick of the SFL Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select defensive tackle Gary Burney, Tyler, Texas. The 71st pick and the conclusion of round 4 belongs to the Fleet.
Gary Burney coming in at defensive tackle for the Portland Fleet. Michael Torillo, talk to me a little bit about what you know about Gary Burney and why this pick might have gone down for Portland.
Well, Gary Burney led the SFLM in sacks with 9.5 for the Boise Mud Dogs, so he's a great defensive tackle. And, we said that they could have gone anywhere with this pick, and they go defensive end, or defensive tackle rather, shoring up the defensive line. And I mean, there's not much else you can say about it. He's a class player, and he'll be great things in Portland.
Well, I got something to say. Jacob Bovette, Johnny, in the chat says, we'll see you on the field, Johnny. And I don't know if a panelist on the draft committee has ever influenced a selection, but Johnny, your thoughts about Jacob Bovette hearing what you're saying about all this domination and trying to pick a Batman of his own in Gary Burney.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have nothing bad to say about that draft pick, and of course, right after those words come out of my mouth, they drafted defensive lineman, the biggest threat to a quarterback in this league, so, and a guy who led the minors in sacks. So, I'm sure that guy is going to have something specific to he's going to have a little bit of extra motivation when they play St. Louis. Go ahead, guys, pin it on the bulletin, on the blackboard, the bulletin board, if it helps you guys out, whatever helps you guys sleep at night. I look forward to it. And good luck, Portland. Hope Matt South does it for you, and and let's get it done, boys.
All right. Well,
you okay, Eddie?
Yeah, let's swing it over to Tim Hackett, just because I don't know if Eddie will be able to function at this point if I toss it to him. Tim Hackett, talk to me a little bit about Burney. Michael Torillo said he made quite the impact in the SFLM. Do you think he can do the same for Portland?
Yeah, I don't see why not. And Trillo's right. I mean, he was one of the league leaders at sacks all season long. We've seen two of the other ones, in Tina Begin and Igor Barbatov, come off the board already. I hope that Derwin Nuevo can come off the board and sometime later on this week to kind of complete the top 4 among the sack leaders. But they've got a full complement of defensive tackles. I hope that Gary Burney can help complement Bernard Patterson. That'd be a good pass rusher combined with Patterson's run-stopping ability. Could be a really good 1-2 inside.
The pick is in. Let's send it over to the podium. And for the last time tonight, show me cowboy hat.
No, but I did want you to keep it on Eddie there. I wanted to see if we could extend the draft show a little bit, watching him think something is very funny.
Squirm.
Watch it. There you go, Tim. Yeah. With the 71st pick of the SFL's Season 15 rookie draft, the Portland Fleet select Chris Stock, St. John, Washington, cornerback. That concludes round 4, and don't forget, Access Live comes your way about 15 minutes after the show concludes. He has another full panel, including the number 1 pick. Back to you, Andy, to wrap up.
Chris Stock, the selection for the Portland Fleet, and an interesting pick there, Tim Hackett. We saw you make a face. We'll send it over to you here in a minute. But the other thing I want to highlight is for any of those potential players who were not selected, just a reminder that there are supplemental draft picks this weekend coming. Your chance to get into the SFL is not all long and forgot. 71 picks is not enough to fill this league. But Tim Hackett, your thoughts on Stock and the pick here for Portland to round out the 4th round?
I think it's a really interesting pick, Andy, because with all of these picks that Portland had, they had 7 total today. They concentrated those 7 picks on 3 positions: defensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. So clearly their goal was to shore up certain positions rather than spread the wealth, if you will, and try to fill a lot of needs. So that clearly, to me, was the game plan for Jacob and Nelson. And so now they've got a trio of corners, including Chris Stock, who is one of the highest rated in terms of overall ratings corners in the minor league. He and Cameron Shaw were an excellent 1-2 for Albuquerque. We already talked about Tina Begin on the Albuquerque front. The Albuquerque Adams were the best defensive team in the minor league across the board. We saw a lot of their defensive players get drafted over the last 3 days as a reflection of that. So Cameron Shaw, a 1st-round pick. Chris Stock, his counterpart on the other side, now a 3rd-round pick. So if he's going to be the slot corner for Portland to join Derek Majors and Bob Funk potentially, that might be how that shakes out. That is a really, really good 1, 2, 3. I think there's still some holes for them to address later on, but that quarterback spot and their slot corner spot is all set to go.
Michael Torillo, 3 more rounds await us this weekend. Give me a couple players that you'll have your eye on heading into the supplemental round.
Well, I mentioned him a couple of times tonight. A.K. Jones, defensive tackle, didn't go tonight, and he was the top of my defensive tackle list that hadn't been selected yet. He's the biggest shock, really, for me. But then the quarterbacks that played in the SFLM that didn't get selected at quarterback and could have to flex to their secondary builds. I'm talking about Cameron Curtis, JQ, Spencer Gordon, and PJ Slaughter. Look for those 4 to come off the board early in the supplemental rounds on Friday.
Yeah, great notes. Let's send it over to Johnny Pickler himself. Johnny, any other teams you want to call out tonight, or is the draft over so you're good?
I mean, since you asked, I mean, I definitely have week 7. Definitely have week 7 against you, Circle, Andy. So right. if Cam wants to put us both, in the corner of that screen to see our reactions during that game, I know I'll have fun with it.
We certainly will see how that game will go and how all of them will go. I'm sure I and many other players in this league look forward to playing you, Johnny. It should be a goal for all. Eddie, how do you think tonight wound out for these teams, and what are you looking forward to over the weekend? Lots of good players still to get picked.
There are a lot of great players out there, but not only just great players, but guys who are willing to help the team in other areas, which is why some of these guys, I believe, leapfrog some of the guys who have more talent, more value on the board. So you got to come with your A game. These guys, the SFL, these players continue to raise the bar season in and season out. They're willing to come and step up. They don't want to just be a player, but find out ways they can help their team. And these guys have done that, which is why I believe a lot of these guys with a lot of value are still on the board.
Well, for everyone here at the Simulation Football League, Cameron Irvine, Rich Pratchard behind the scenes tonight running things for us. For Johnny Pickler, for Eddie Gage, for Tim Hackett, for Michael Turillo, I am Andy Hamilton, thanking you for joining us for rounds 3 and 4. Stay tuned. We will see you this weekend for the supplemental rounds. And if you want to be a part of the best Simulation Football League on the internet and in the world, head over to simulationfl.net, join our Discord server, and become a pro today. Thank you guys, and good night.
Good night. Drive home safely.